Chapter 575. A sharp glint flashed across Jiang Yuqing's eyes. He actually came so quickly. In that case, Yuqi Song must have already known something and deliberately came to verify it. If he went out now and Yuqi Song saw his current appearance, everything would be irrefutable. Hearing no movement, the servant asked again, "Eldest young master." Jiang Yuqing struggled to get up. In fact, the terrifying pain had already dissipated. Because his realm had already fallen, and that red line, he looked down at his wrist. The wound that appeared because the bloodline was broken was not deep, but it was clearly visible. Since Yuqi Song had already come to the Jiang mansion, then it was very likely that he already knew about this bloodline. He had to find a way to cover it up. Invite Pavilion Master Yuqi to the study room first. This young master will go in a moment. He took a deep breath and tried to make his voice sound calm and normal. Yes. Hearing the hurried footsteps outside, Jiang Yuqing held his forehead with one hand and thought hard. Yuqi Song came prepared. It was not that easy to deceive him. Yuqi Song was originally following the servant to the study room, but on the way, he met Jiang Lizhua, who just happened to return. Seeing Yuqi Song appear in the Jiang mansion, Jiang Lizhua was very surprised. They had never had much contact with the Chongshu Pavilion. Moreover, in Xiling City, basically no one wanted to take the initiative to interact with the Chongshu Pavilion. However, Jiang Lizhua's face was still very good. He personally received Yuqi Song. After the two of them sat down in the study room, Jiang Lizhua asked Yuqi Song's purpose in coming to the Jiang mansion. When he heard that Yuqi Song had specially come to find Jiang Yuqing, he felt even more strange. However, seeing that Yuqi Song did not seem to have any intention of letting go, he tactfully did not ask any more questions and only chatted about something else. I heard that Chongshu Pavilion has recently accepted two extremely outstanding disciples. I haven't had the time to congratulate Pavilion Master Yuqi. Jiang Lizhua smiled very politely. He had more or less heard about what happened at the Wanjing meet. Many people didn't understand why Chu Luiyue and the other man chose the Chongshu Pavilion. He was just as curious. It was unknown if Yuqi Song had done something in private, or if it was something else. Hearing him mention Chu Luiyue, the smile on Yuqi Song's face became much more genuine. Yes. It is indeed Chongshu Pavilion's fortune to have the two of them. If not for the two of them, the chaos yuan gravel on Qingyuan Mountain would still be spreading everywhere. Looking at Yuqi Song's happy and proud appearance, Jiang Lizhua raised his eyebrows slightly. Actually, he was just casually saying that. At the end of the day, they were just two half-grown children. How much trouble could they cause? Moreover, he had heard that the two of them did not have a good background. Even if he had outstanding talent, he might not be able to become a top expert in the future. Yuqi Song, on the other hand, had been in low spirits for more than a year. It had been a long time since he showed such an expression. Could it be that he was really happy? Thinking about it carefully, it was actually understandable. It was indeed quite rare for the Chongshu Pavilion to be able to accept new disciples. It was no wonder that Yuqi Song was like this. Jiang Lizhua was mocking him in his heart, but he still revealed a look of admiration on his face. To be able to make Pavilion Master Yuqi praise him like this, he must be a dragon among men. If there's a chance in the future, you must meet him. Ha! Yuqi Song glanced at him meaningfully and smiled as well. Definitely. Of course, he could tell that Jiang Lizhua looked down on their Chongshu Pavilion and everyone in the Chongshu Pavilion. Over the past year or so, he had seen too many such gazes and expressions. If it was in the past, he would more or less feel a little uncomfortable every time he met them. Therefore, he gradually didn't interact much with the crowd. But it was different now. No matter what these outsiders thought, he didn't care at all. When they really see the strength of Lu Yu and Wan Zhou in the future, TSK. He was also looking forward to it. The two of them chatted for quite a long time, beating around the bush. Yuchi-san gradually became impatient, but the suspicion in his heart became more and more certain. Jiang Yuqing stayed in his residence, but he actually took so long to come out to meet people. No one would believe that there was no ghost. After a while, a voice finally came from outside the door. "Greetings, eldest young master." Yuchi-san looked at the door. After Chu Luiyue arranged all the gifts, she rushed back to Chang Wanzhou and cultivated in her room in peace. After the water droplet in her dantian swallowed the messed yuan gravel, the aura in her body seemed to have strengthened a lot. She guided this power and circulated it in her body, but she didn't try to continue breaking through. In the eyes of ordinary people, although the speed of her advancement was a little fast, it was actually considered normal. After all, she had the Daijing Yuan Meridian. However, Chu Luiyue knew very well that her pill of essence was different from others. The speed of this breakthrough was really a little fast. Girl is quite cautious. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded, and there was a hint of admiration in his tone. After this period of time, he could already confirm that Chu Luiyue had more potential than he had imagined. What was even rarer was that she had an extremely tenacious will and strong control. In the face of the temptation of a breakthrough, not many people in this world could resist it. However, Chu Luiyue did very well. This breadth of mind and vision was indeed extraordinary. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly. Taizu didn't know her situation, but he could barely sense the surging power around her. However, he could guess a lot based on this. After all, he was Taizu, so Chu Luiyue didn't want to deliberately hide it. "Thank you, Taizu." Compared to the breakthrough of the realm, she wanted to try to cultivate the Jingshan Pa more now. However, just as she adjusted her breath, she heard Lu Xiao's voice coming from outside. "Little junior sister. Someone is looking for you." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 576. It was almost evening. Who would come to look for her at this time? Chu Luiyue got up and went to open the door. She saw Lu Xiao standing at the door. "Senior brother Lu, who's looking for me?" They had just met in the afternoon, so they shouldn't be here now. Lu Xiao's expression was a little strange. "It's a man from outside. He said he was looking for you, so I told him to wait at the foot of the mountain." Chongshu Pavilion was currently heavily guarded. Although there were no restrictions on the entry and exit of the disciples, they were still very strict with outsiders. A man. Chu Luiyue quickly thought about it. She had just arrived at West Hill not long ago. Other than the group of people at Chongshu Pavilion, she didn't have much contact with anyone else. It shouldn't be Jian Fengqi or Mu Qinghe. These two people were too famous in West Hill. Lu Xiao had seen them before. Could it be that one of them had sent someone? Did he say who he was? Lu Xiao nodded. "He said his name is Yan Qing and that he came specially to see you." Chu Luiyue was shocked. Yan Qing. Why is he here? Shouldn't he be accompanying Rong Xiao at Minghui Tianshan? Seeing the slight change in Chu Luiyue's expression, Lu Xiao asked tentatively, "Junior sister, do you know this person?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "He's a friend of mine. Please invite him up, senior brother." If there was nothing urgent, he definitely wouldn't have come all the way here. Could it be that something had happened to Rong Xiao? Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Lu Xiao saw the urgency and worry in her eyes and couldn't help but think more. That Yan Qing looked like a talent. Could it be that he had a close relationship with junior sister? If that was the case, they had to help junior sister investigate properly. Thinking of this, Lu Xiao suddenly felt a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. "Junior sister, wait a moment. I'll bring him up." After saying that, he quickly left. Chu Luiyue stared blankly at his rapidly disappearing figure. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but why did she feel that? Lu Xiao suddenly seemed to want to see Yan Qing. Lu Yu, I heard that someone came to the mountain to look for you. Just as Chu Luiyue was thinking about this, he saw Yi Ranran suddenly appear from the side with a curious look on his face. Seeing Chu Luiyue's suspicious gaze, Yi Ranran hurriedly explained. It wasn't Lu Xiao who told me. I accidentally overheard it. Besides, the other senior brothers and sisters don't know about it either. Chu Luiyue. Where are my senior brothers and sisters now? Yi Ranran suddenly blushed and did not say anything. Yi Ranran took 2 steps forward and looked at Chu Luiyue cautiously. Mountain Pass. Chu Luiyue's brows twitched. Mountain Pass. Isn't that the location of the mountain gate? When Yan Qing comes up the stairs, she will be able to see him at a glance. Chu Luiyue recalled the scene of her first day at the Chongshu Pavilion. After climbing countless stairs, as soon as she reached the peak, several enthusiastic faces appeared in front of her. Chu Luiyue, she really suspected that a large part of the reason why the Chongshu Pavilion had fallen to this point was because the disciples of the pavilion were too gossipy. If they didn't cultivate properly, how could they become strong? Yi Ranran quickly explained, actually, we didn't mean to intentionally do that. Well, actually, we didn't do it on purpose. It's just that when Lu Xiao came up, he happened to meet 2 senior sisters who had just returned halfway up the mountain, so he told them. Then, after climbing half the mountain, everyone knew about it. That's right, Yi Ranran responded softly. Although she came earlier than Chu Luiyue and could be considered Chu Luiyue's senior sister, Chu Luiyue always seemed to have a noble and powerful aura. In addition, Chu Luiyue had taken the initiative to stand up for her previously, so it was very difficult for her to put on the airs of a senior sister in front of Chu Luiyue. At this moment, when Chu Luiyue glanced at her from the corner of her eye, she shrunk her neck timidly and felt inexplicably guilty. Chu Luiyue walked forward. At this moment, Chang Wanzhou heard the commotion and also walked out from next door. He looked at Chu Luiyue with some confusion in his eyes. It seemed that she was quite concerned about this man who suddenly came. Yi Ranran leaned over to Chang Wanzhou and asked softly, Wanzhou, do you know that Yan Qing? Chang Wanzhou shook his head. Junior sister. He's here. Lu Xiao's loud voice came from afar. The corners of Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched slightly. Was he afraid that everyone couldn't hear him? She quickened her pace and soon saw her senior brothers and sisters gathered in a group. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Just as she was seriously considering whether she should retreat first, a senior sister happened to turn around and see her. She quickly exclaimed, Junior sister is here too. Everyone fell silent for a moment, then immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Junior sister, we still have something to do, so we'll leave first. Take your time to chat, take your time. Although they said that they were going to leave, their eyes were still looking down the mountain. At this moment, Lu Xiao had already arrived. Yan Qing was behind him. He was wearing black heavy armor, and there were still some traces of blood on his body. Although he had restrained his aura, there was still a faint murderous aura. It was as if he had just returned from a battlefield. This aura immediately made all the senior brothers and sisters who had yet to leave stop in their tracks. This man wasn't simple at first glance. Why did he come to find junior sister in such a hurry? Chu Luiyue had never seen him like this before. At this moment, she was also shocked. Yan Qing. Yan Qing had already sensed several auras at the entrance of the mountain before he came up, so he wasn't surprised to see these people at this time. He looked forward and saw Chu Luiyue with a surprised expression. He immediately walked forward and stood in front of Chu Luiyue, then knelt on one knee. Yan Qing greets Miss Lu Yu. Everyone looked at each other. Oh, it doesn't seem like what we thought before. Chu Luiyue helped him up and quickly sized him up, frowning slightly. Why are you suddenly here? And dressed like this? Did something happen? Yan Qing shook his head. Miss Lu Yu, don't worry. Master is fine. Today, I came to deliver something to you. Actually, he had already arrived at West Hill before, but because he didn't know where Chu Luiyue lived now, he had wasted some time. Later, he thought that since she had already joined the Chongshu Pavilion, then it was very likely that she was at Qingyuan Mountain. He came over to take a look, and sure enough, she was here. Everyone's eyes changed again. Master. His master. Who was he to junior sister? Chu Luiyue felt a little relieved, but she was also very puzzled. What did he ask you to deliver? What was so important that he was in such a hurry that Yan Qing didn't even have time to take off his armor and came all the way here? Yan Qing took out a small jade box and presented it with both hands. Chu Luiyue took it. It was only half the size of a palm. What could be inside? With a click, she opened the jade box. A ring that was emitting a faint glow was lying quietly within. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 577. This is an interspatial ring? Chu Luiyue asked uncertainly. Yan Qing nodded. Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. Could it be that Yan Qing came here so hard just to give me an interspatial ring? Yan Qing seemed to have seen through her doubts and said respectfully, Miss Lu Yu, Master ordered me to give this to you in person. Chu Luiyue picked up the interspatial ring. It was simple and elegant. The material was neither stone nor jade, but it glowed faintly and looked clear and moist. It seems to be, for a man. Chu Luiyue looked at the interspatial ring carefully and saw a small character, Xiao, engraved on the inside of the ring. This is Rong Xiao's interspatial ring. Did he say what he wanted you to do with this thing? Chu Luiyue asked. Yan Qing's expression changed slightly as he shook his head. Actually, although he didn't see the handwriting, he could guess Master's plan. But he couldn't say it out. Maybe you will know when you put it on. Chu Luiyue injected the force into the ring and found that the seal on it had been erased. Now that she had made such a move, the interspatial ring had become hers. Obviously, Rong Xiao did it on purpose. But why? Chu Luiyue thought as she injected the force into the ring. Suddenly, her movements paused, and the expression on her face froze for a moment. This interspatial ring was of a very high level. It had the largest storage space that Chu Luiyue had ever seen. Compared with this interspatial ring, her previous one seemed to be small pockets that couldn't be taken out. More importantly, it is full of white crystal coins. Because there were so many of them that they almost piled up like a mountain, Chu Luiyue couldn't tell how much they were. In short, there were a lot of them. It was rare for Chu Luiyue to be so slow. There was only one question left in her mind, and it kept circling in her mind. How could Rong Xiao be so rich? Miss Lu Yu. Yan Qing looked at Chu Luiyue in a daze for a while and finally couldn't help but ask. Chu Luiyue came back to his senses and looked at the interspatial ring in his hand with a complicated expression. She doesn't seem to understand her man at all. Now, she finally understood why Rong Xiao asked Yan Qing to make the trip in person. The Cosmos ring was too precious. Was Rong Xiao worried that she had no money to spend? Other than that, she really couldn't think of a second reason. Miss Lu Yu, the items have been delivered. If you don't have any other instructions, I will return to report. Yan Qing said. He came in a hurry. If he returned late, he might not be able to see Yumo's miserable state. Chu Luiyue rubbed the interspatial ring in her hand. Something seemed to surge in her heart. Wait a moment. Help me bring a letter back. As Chu Luiyue spoke, she turned around and quickly walked back into the house. Yan Qing followed and waited respectfully outside the door. This time, Lu Xiao and the others didn't follow, but they exchanged glances with each other very frequently. So this Yan Qing isn't little junior sister's sweetheart. His master must be her, right? Isn't little junior sister only 14 years old? Why is she already engaged? I don't know who is so lucky. But speaking of which, when can we meet that person? What if he isn't worthy of little junior sister? Don't you see that Yan Qing is full of murderous aura? He suppressed his realm, but his true strength is probably not weaker than ours. As for his master, isn't he even stronger? I think little junior sister is good at everything. She must have good taste too. Then what about little junior brother? TSK, can't you see that little junior sister is raising little junior brother like a child? Yan Qing was waiting patiently outside the door when he suddenly saw a young man walk past him and enter the room. He was slightly stunned and looked up. It was an exceptionally thin young man with soft golden short hair. His skin was so white that it was almost translucent. Although it was only a quick glance, one could still tell that his facial features were exquisite and very beautiful. Although this word wasn't suitable to describe a young man, this was definitely the first thing that came to mind when he saw him. He looked to be in his teens and had a hint of youthfulness. At the same time, he had a hint of wildness. He was like a complicated and simple contradiction. While he was in a daze, he saw that the young man had already walked to Chu Luiyue's side and helped her grind the ink. From the beginning to the end, he didn't say a word, and his expression was cold and indifferent. However, his movements were smooth and natural, as if he had done it many times. Chu Luiyue looked at Chang Wanzhou in surprise. When did this child become so discerning? Judging from his proficiency, he must have done this many times in the past. She smiled and dipped the brush in the ink. After thinking repeatedly in her heart, she finally put the brush down. Yan Qing raised his eyebrows high. What is going on? Didn't Miss Lu come to West Hill with Jian Fengqi previously? Except for Mu Qinghe and Jian Fengqi, she shouldn't be familiar with anyone else. But this young man seems to be very close to her. When did such a person appear beside Miss Lu? Yan Qing looked carefully and thought to himself, Yu Ling is becoming more and more unreliable. He didn't even report such a big piece of news. If Master finds out about this later, Yan Qing suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 578. Chu Luiyue quickly finished writing the letter and put it in the envelope. She walked out and handed the letter to Yan Qing. Yan Qing, please help me pass this letter to him. Yan Qing took it with both hands and said respectfully, yes. Don't worry, Miss Luiyue. I'll definitely bring it to him. Chu Luiyue was indeed quite assured of Yan Qing. She said, seeing that you came out in a hurry, I won't delay you any longer. Yan Qing cupped his fists and bowed. Take care, Miss Luiyue. I'll take my leave. With that, he carefully put away the letter and turned to leave. Until his figure disappeared from sight, the mountain peak was still silent for a long time. Chu Luiyue's gaze swept across the crowd. Senior brothers and sisters, do you have any other questions? Everyone immediately reacted. No. Little junior sister is busy. We'll take our leave first. With that, they really left quickly and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiyue, Lu Xia wanted to ask a few more questions, but he was pulled away by Yi Ranran. Chang Wanzhou glanced at the interspatial ring on Chu Luiyue's hand. His eyes darkened, but he didn't say anything. He turned around and returned to his room. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. The interspatial ring was a little big for her, so she put it on her thumb. Sunlight shone through her fingers. The interspatial ring seemed to have become clearer and shinier. Crack. Suddenly, a faint sound could be heard. Chu Luiyue was dazed. The cosmic ring that she was wearing on her other finger suddenly cracked open a little. That was her first interspatial ring. Although its level wasn't high and the space wasn't very big, she was used to wearing it for a long time, so she didn't take it off. She didn't expect it to crack. Chu Luiyue took it off and looked at the crack regretfully. But from the looks of it, there was no way to recover. She went back to her room and took out all the things in the interspatial ring. She rearranged them and put them into the interspatial ring given to her by Rongxiu. Although there were countless white crystal coins in it, there was still a lot of space. It was more than enough to store Chu Luiyue's things. Suddenly, the sound of something shattering could be heard again. Chu Luiyue looked over. Beside her were a few interspatial rings. He had gotten it from Jian Fengqi. There were 8 of them in total. There was a lot of money in each of them. One of them also had cracks on it. In desperation, Chu Luiyue had no choice but to transfer everything into the new interspatial ring. However, as soon as he did that, the third interspatial ring also shattered. Chu Luiyue stared at the crack and finally realized something. He slowly looked at the faintly glowing interspatial ring in his hand. It seemed that, it was because of this, as if to prove her conjecture, the rest of the interspatial rings were damaged one after another in a short period of time. In the end, there was not even a complete one left. When Chu Luiyue transferred all the things inside, the interspatial rings directly turned into powder silently. Chu Luiyue looked at the powder on the table and glanced at the interspatial ring in his hand. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Jiang Mansion. Yuqi Song stared at Jiang Yuqing who came in. After a moment, he narrowed his eyes. Jiang Yuqing's aura was completely concealed. He seemed to have used a yuan instrument that could hide his realm. In this way, there was no difference at a glance, but others could not detect his true strength. In his heart, Weiqi Song was almost certain that Jiang Yuqing was the one who did it. Father, Pavilion Master Yuqi. Jiang Yuqing walked in with a normal expression and greeted the two of them before sitting down beside Jiang Lizhua and facing Yuqi Song. Pavilion Master Yuqi, why are you here today? Jiang Yuqing had a gentle and polite smile on his face, and he couldn't find anything wrong with it. Yuqi Song glanced at Jiang Lizhua hesitantly. Jiang Lizhua sneered in his heart, but he laughed on the surface. Since Yuqing is already here, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. Then, he left very straightforwardly. When the door closed again, Jiang Yuqing looked at Yuqi Song again. Pavilion Master Yuqi, what do you have to say? Can you say it now? Yuqi Song didn't answer him immediately as his sharp and cold gaze slowly swept across Jiang Yuqing. After a moment, he said, Eldest young Master Jiang, why do you have the smell of blood on you? Jiang Yuqing's expression froze. Before I came, I had specially washed the bloodstains on my face and body, and I even changed my clothes. How did Yuqi Song still discover it? He forcefully calmed himself down and smiled slightly. Pavilion Master Yuqi, you're really impressive. You can even detect this. As he spoke, he raised his hand. I accidentally scratched my hand previously, and I simply cleaned it up just now. It's no wonder that you would smell this bloody smell. His hand was wrapped in gauze, and dark red blood stains seeped out. It was obvious that he was injured not long ago. Also, I couldn't see what the wound was like. Yuqi Song's eyes darkened. Could there really be such a coincidence in this world? I wanted to check his cultivation level, so I hid my aura. I wanted to look at his wrist, but his hand was bandaged. Jiang Yuqing's wrist was also covered by his wide sleeves, so I couldn't see it clearly. He really put in a lot of effort, Yuqi Song sneered in his heart. Jiang Yuqing is simply exposing himself. I see. Eldest young master Jiang should be more careful. This time, it was scratched, but next time, it might not be so. Jiang Yuqing's pupils constricted. Yuqi Song is warning me. This old man is indeed here today for one thing. Yuqi Song didn't seem to notice the change in Jiang Yuqing's expression, and simply changed the topic. This old man remembers that the key to Thousand View Garden seems to be with you. Hearing Thousand View Garden, Jiang Yuqing's heart suddenly jumped. He forced a smile on his stiff face. That's right. The key there is indeed in my custody. Pavilion Master Yuqi, why are you asking this? Yuqi Song let out a long sigh. Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that when this old man went to Thousand View Garden a day ago, I suddenly remembered that this old man had once given the Empress a few things when I was alive. They were all placed in the zither room of Thousand View Garden. Now that she's gone, this old man wants to take back those things as a memento. Jiang Yuqing furrowed his brows undetectably. You said that there are things that belong to you in the zither room. Yuqi Song nodded and began to count seriously. On her 10th birthday, this old man personally carved the wandering dragon wolf brush for her. On her 13th birthday, this old man prepared the zither plug for her. Before she married you, at this point, he suddenly stopped. The room fell into a dead silence. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 579. Cough. Look at this old man's memory. That's all in the past. There's no point in talking about it anymore. After all, you're already engaged to the third princess. Yuqi Song seemed to have just reacted, and a trace of disappointment and anxiety flashed across his face. This. You don't mind, do you? The smile on Jiang Yuqing's face became even stiffer. How can that be? You're right. But some things have already happened, and there's no way to undo them. He paused for a moment, and with great difficulty, he suppressed the anger in his chest before speaking the rest of his words smoothly. Do you mean that you want to take back all these things now? Yuqi Song said with a bitter smile. This old man really has no choice. More than a year ago, the Chongshu Pavilion was ransacked. This old man has many things related to the Empress, but almost all of them were lost. In addition, the Chongshu Pavilion can't make ends meet. Those are the only things this old man has left for the Empress. As Jiang Yuqing listened, he became more and more annoyed in his heart. He forced himself to wait for Yuqi Song to finish before saying, Pavilion Master Yuqi, I can understand your feelings. How about this? I'll personally go back and retrieve the things. After packing them up, I'll send them to the Chongshu Pavilion. How about that? Yuqi Song looked troubled. It's not impossible, but those things are quite fragmented. This old man doesn't want to trouble others. It's more appropriate for me to go personally. The smile on Jiang Yuqing's face froze slightly, and his tone became a little cold. Pavilion Master Yuqi, it's not that I don't want to give you the key, but you know that it's a place that the Empress cared about very much when she was alive. Whether it's for her or for us, it's very important. We've always tried our best to keep everything inside intact for fear of destroying it. Now that you want to retrieve the item, the most suitable way is for me to help you retrieve it. Don't worry, whatever you want, just tell me. I'll definitely help you do it. These words were already quite polite, but there was also a hint of irrefutable strength. When ordinary people heard this, they would understand that Jiang Yuqing didn't intend to hand over the key. But Yuqi Song wasn't an ordinary person. Moreover, he had come today to find trouble with Jiang Yuqing. Therefore, he also said very firmly, don't worry. This old man will only go in for a moment. I won't damage anything inside. Pavilion Master Yuqi, what? Are you questioning this old Yuchi-jo? Or are you worried about this old me? Yuchi-song's words, s at it jiang Yuchi-song, jiang Yuchi-songs is at ses at this moment, Yuchi's at this moment at Yuchi-Yuchi-songs. Yuchi-Yuchi-song, Yuchi, at yes to yes s to be at. F. Yuchi. Yuchi Pavilion Masters is. Yuang Yu Jiang used to me. S to Yuchi of course of. Of you, Jiang Yuching felt aggrieved, but this was probably the only way to get rid of Wei Qi Song. This old man still has matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. See you tomorrow at Xianli Garden. Wei Qi Song's tone was firm. Jiang Yuqing was about to say that he didn't have time tomorrow when he saw that Yuchi Song had already stood up and was about to leave. Oh, right. Although eldest young Master Jiang is only slightly injured, you still need to recuperate. You have a lot of things to do at the moment. You can't have any problems, right? These words made Jiang Yuqing feel guilty. He could only swallow the rest of his words and get up to send Yuchi Song out. It wasn't until Yuchi Song left the Jiang mansion that Jiang Yuqing's expression completely turned cold. He was in too much of a hurry today, so he didn't have time to use a better method to conceal his aura. The doubts in Yuchi Song's heart must have not been dispelled, and he would definitely continue to test him. Sun Qi. This subordinate is here. Today, this young master is going into seclusion. No one is allowed to disturb me. Yes. Night fell, and the bright moon hung high in the sky. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged in her room with her eyes closed. The force in her body circulated slowly and steadily, and the aura around her gradually strengthened. Then, she stretched out her right hand and recalled the Jingxin finger technique in her mind. At the same time, she mobilized the force in her body and surged it toward her index finger. A speck of starlight slowly appeared on her fingertip. A powerful pressure gradually spread out from the top of the tower. Chu Luiyue began to recall the Jingxin palm technique in her mind. At that time, the entire Jingxin technique was engraved on the 4 walls on the top floor of Tai Yan Academy's library. It included the Jingxin finger, the Jingxin palm, and the Jingxin fist. The level of these 3 techniques increased with each level, and the corresponding difficulty also gradually increased. She remembered the entire Jingxin technique by heart. She could almost recite it backwards. The first time she cultivated the Jingxin finger, she tried thousands of times before finally succeeding. After that, she would repeatedly practice whenever she had time. Now, she had finally mastered the Jingxin finger technique and could start to move on to the Jingxin palm technique. In her mind, the silver light gradually gathered and transformed into a blurry figure. Chu Luiyue could barely recognize that it seemed to be a man, but she could not identify anything else. He raised his hand, and a speck of starlight appeared on his index finger. Then, the speck of starlight suddenly dispersed into a few specks of starlight and landed lightly on his other fingers. The silver light quickly enveloped his entire palm. He flipped his wrist and pushed the palm out. Thousands of specks of light bloomed. Chu Luiyue opened her eyes and looked at her right hand. She focused on the speck of light on her fingertip and began to try to disperse it. However, the speck of starlight did not have any reaction. Chu Luiyue seemed to have expected this result. There was no surprise or disappointment on her face. Instead, she was even more determined to continue. Back then, in order to condense the silver speck of starlight on her index finger, she had failed countless times before finally succeeding. Now that she had to disperse it, it was equivalent to multitasking. Naturally, it was even more difficult. She circulated the force in her body again and tried again. Failure. Failure again. Failure again. The moonlight shone in from the window and shone on her body, dragging her shadow extremely long. She seemed to have entered a meditative state as she stared at her palm from beginning to end. If it were not for the force circulating around her body, one would almost think that she was a statue. Time flew by quickly. Every time she tried, the thick force would surge out from her dantian and spread to her limbs and bones. As a result, Chu Liuyue's Yuan meridian also experienced the cleansing of energy time and time again, and became stronger and wider. A night passed. When the morning sun shone down, Chu Liuyue's fingertip finally separated a small speck of light and landed on her thumb. On her hand, 2 faint silver specks flickered and shone brightly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 580. Chu Liyue could not hide her joy as she looked at the 2 balls of light in her hands. She had finally made a breakthrough. Although she had only released 1 ball of starlight, it was already an excellent start. Chu Liyue waved her finger, and the light quietly dissipated. After circulating her force for 1 circulatory cycle, she packed up and left the room. She had not slept all night, but she was not sleepy at all. Instead, she felt more energetic. She went to the herb garden alone. The herbs she planted did not wither as quickly as before. Instead, they grew smoothly. Chu Liyue carefully took care of them. After that, her senior brothers and sisters came one after another. However, they were not here to see her this time. They were here to see the herbs. Although the pavilion master said that the herb garden had returned to normal, they were still a little worried, so they could not help but come early in the morning to take a look. They did not expect Chu Liyue to be here earlier than them. Moreover, judging from her clean and neat technique, she was clearly very good at this. Everyone was delighted, and they praised Chu Liyue even more. Little junior sister was even more amazing than they had imagined. Even elder Xia Yi came to see her. However, compared to the others, he did not say much. He only went up to Chu Liyue and said seriously, "Thank you." "Thank you, Liu." Chu Liyue blinked. When she saw elder Xia Yi's expression, she immediately guessed that he must have learned about the messed yuan gravel. Her eyes curved into crescents. "You're welcome, elder Xia Yi. I'm a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion, so it's my duty to do this." Elder Xia Yi sighed. "I wonder what kind of luck we have. Could it be that the heavens have finally decided to make it up to us because we've suffered too much?" The only pity was that both Chu Liyue and Chang Wanzhou had chosen Yuqi Song as their master. "Actually, I'm not much worse than the pavilion master." "Sigh, why didn't you choose me?" Elder Xia Yi stroked his beard. "Hee, before you came, the pavilion master would stay on the mountain for a month or so. Now that I've accepted the 2 of you as my disciples, why are you running down the mountain frequently every day?" Only then did Chu Liyue remember that after Yuqi Song went to the Jiang mansion yesterday, she had not seen him and had not asked him about the investigation. "Master went down the mountain again today?" "Yes. He left just now. They should be halfway up the mountain by now, right?" Chu Liyue felt a little strange. Could it be that he didn't see Jiang Yuqing yesterday, so he went there again today? "Elder Shui, do you know where Master went today?" "Are we going to the Jiang mansion?" Elder Xia Yi shook his head. "That's not it. He went to Axianli Garden today." Chu Liyue was stunned. Why did she go to Axianli Garden again? Seeing Chu Liyue's bewildered expression, Elder Xia Yi explained. "In fact, he went there today to bring some things with him. You should know that the pavilion master used to have a very good relationship with the crown princess, so she put many things there." Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. "Are you saying that master is actually going to the zither room today?" Elder Xia Yi asked in surprise. "How do you know that?" Chu Liyue paused and said softly, "I'm sorry. I've heard master mention it before, Elder Xiaoyi nodded without suspecting anything. I see. You're right. He did go there. According to him, it seems that he's going to bring those things back. In fact, he did mention it before, but he was afraid that it would hurt him if he saw them, so he just left them there. I don't know why, but he suddenly changed his mind. Chu Liuyue's mind raced. That day, the three-eyed eagle said that the purple gold Bodhi leaf seemed to be near the zither room. If I can go with Yuchi Song this time, I can go there legitimately. At the thought of this, she immediately said goodbye to Elder Xiaoyi and left in a hurry. Elder Xiaoyi looked at her disappearing figure with a confused look on his face. Why are both master and disciple acting so strange? Chu Luyue was very fast. When she reached the foot of the mountain, she finally caught up with Yuchi Song. Master! Yuchi Song turned around. Lu Yu. Why are you here? Chu Luyue quickly walked to his side, and beads of sweat had already formed on her forehead. Master, I heard from Elder Xiaoyi that you're going to Axayanli Garden today. Yuchi Song nodded. Yes. Seeing that Chu Luyue seemed to be in a hurry, he asked, Oh, right. When I came back yesterday, I wanted to look for you. But you and Wanzhou seemed to be cultivating, so I didn't disturb you. The day before yesterday, Chu Luyue gave Chang Wanzhou a few more pills. Now, he was indeed busy dispelling the cold evil energy in his body. Upon hearing Yuchi Song's words, Chu Luyue's heart suddenly felt like it was being squeezed by something. So, what did you find? Yuchi Song paused for a moment, then lowered his voice and said slowly, he concealed his aura. He concealed his aura, and his hand was injured. Although it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it should be him. Chu Luyue held her breath. I knew it. With so much evidence pointing to Jiang Yuqing, she was basically certain in her heart. She wasn't shocked to hear this result, but she felt a little conflicted. After her death, Jiang Yuqing still didn't let her people off. In fact, she had implicated the Chongshu Pavilion. She pondered for a moment and finally said, Master, I'd like to go to Axayanli Garden with you. Yuchi Song froze for a moment and didn't quite agree. Lu Yu, I actually have something to do this time, I know. Chu Luyue looked at him fixedly. Perhaps I can help you. Yuchi Song didn't speak for a long time. He could tell that Chu Luyue really wanted to go. She should also know that he was going to the piano room to get something. There must be a reason for her to be so persistent. Master. Chu Luyue's tone carried a hint of longing. Yuchi Song's heart settled. All right. I'll take you there. But after you arrive, you must stay by Master's side and don't act rashly. Chu Luyue immediately said, Thank you, Master. Looking at her smiling eyes that were like a galaxy, the last bit of hesitation in Yuchi Song's heart completely disappeared. If she didn't want to say, then he wouldn't ask. She was a child who was willing to gamble her life for the Chongshu Pavilion. Why wouldn't he trust her? No matter what, he just needed to protect her. Let's go. When Yuchi Song and Chu Luyue arrived at the entrance of Axayanli Garden, Jiang Yuqing was already waiting for them. Seeing Chu Luyue following behind Yuchi Song, Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly. Why is Chu Luyue here too? But he still walked forward with a calm expression, Pavilion Master Yuchi. Chu Luyue's gaze fell on Jiang Yuqing. As expected, he used a yuan tool to conceal his aura. The gauze on his hand had clearly been changed, and there was nothing strange about it. It was just a glance, but she quickly withdrew her gaze. Jiang Yuqing walked to Yuchi Song and stood in front of him. He glanced at him lightly and smiled, Pavilion Master Yuchi, you didn't seem to have said yesterday that you would bring someone else today. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 581. Yuchi-song chuckled and said, "Because I happen to have something to hand over to Luyu, so I asked her to come along." "Young Master Jiang, you won't mind, right?" Jiang Yuqing's smile didn't change, but his tone was a little cold. "Pavilion Master Yuchi is too polite. It's just that this zither room is a little special. Me accompanying you here today is already an exception. I'm afraid unrelated people can't go in." Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Unrelated people. Jiang Yuqing was getting better and better at talking. He hadn't really taken the position yet, but he was already putting himself in such a high position. Wasn't he afraid that he would accidentally fall to his death in the future? That place was originally her place. Why did Jiang Yuqing become the master in the end? When Yuchi-song heard the last sentence, his expression didn't look too good. Lu Yu is this old man's last disciple, not some random person. "Young Master Jiang, please be careful with your words in the future." Jiang Yuqing had only said it casually. He didn't take Chu Luiyue seriously at all. He didn't expect Yuchi-song's attitude to be so unyielding. It seemed that he didn't think highly of Chu Luiyue. He laughed. "Pavilion Master Yuchi, don't be angry. I didn't mean it. Don't take it to heart. I'm just trying to protect the princess's zither room, aren't I? Lu Yu is a child who knows her limits. Moreover, this old man brought her here personally. You don't have to worry." Ever since he knew that Jiang Yuqing was most likely the mastermind behind the destruction of their entire Chongshu pavilion, Yuchi-song didn't have much patience with him and spoke much more harshly. Jiang Yuqing choked for a moment and could only say, "Pavilion Master Yuchi, I'm naturally at ease. Please." After saying that, he took the lead and walked in. Yuchi-song and Chu Luiyue followed closely behind. As Jiang Yuqing walked, he was secretly puzzled. For some reason, the Yuchi-song seemed to have changed a lot recently. In the past, he was always very dispirited and was too lazy to pay attention to many things. As long as it wasn't too overboard, he would usually let it go. But now, he seemed to be much more energetic and sharp than before. Could it be because of the mixed yuan gravel? In the past 2 days, he had sent people to inquire about Chang Wanzhou. He had come from Nanjiang. If he wasn't wrong, he should have guessed that there was a problem with the mixed yuan gravel. But who was the one who did it? Jiang Yuqing thought about it for a whole night, but he still couldn't figure out who had removed the mixed yuan gravel in the Chongshu pavilion. Yuchi-song was injured and had never recovered. It couldn't be him. That left Xia Yi as the most likely candidate. The few of them walked together and soon arrived at Thousand View Garden. Chu Luiyue walked forward without looking sideways. His expression was calm, but he was secretly determining the position of the guards around him. No one was more familiar with everything here than she was. She knew exactly where the guards were and where the hiding places were. Compared to the last time they were here, there were obviously fewer people on guard here. But it was still very strict. And the closer they got to the zither room, the more so. Chu Luiyue sneered in his heart. If it wasn't for his guilty conscience, why would Jiang Yuqing guard this place so tightly? Even when Yuchi-song came to pick up a few things, he had to accompany her personally. Was he afraid that someone would discover something? After walking for a while, a lake appeared in front of them. There was a winding corridor on the lake, and opposite it was a small building. It was quiet, elegant, quiet, and peaceful. That was her former zither room. When she was free or in a bad mood, she would often come here. However, when she saw it again, her state of mind was completely different. Because back then, it was here that she drank the last cup of tea that Jiang Yuqing made. Since then, everything had changed drastically. In other words, this was actually the place where Jiang Yuqing officially began to plot against her. So, of course, he would pay special attention to this place. Jiang Yuqing stood in front and turned around. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, the zither room is ahead. I'll go in with you. But, his gaze fell on Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue's lips curled up. Master, go with young Master Jiang. I'll wait for you here. Yu Qi-song nodded. Okay. I'll be back soon. With that, he stepped onto the winding corridor on the lake with Jiang Yuqing and headed towards the zither room. Chu Liyue stood where he was and looked at their backs with a smile. Jiang Yuqing seemed to have suddenly sensed something and turned around to take a look. By the lake in the distance, the woman in red stood gracefully. There was a faint smile on her beautiful face as she looked at him from afar. Because there was a distance between them, her face and figure were a little blurry. But it was this blur that made her resemble a person. Jiang Yuqing's heart thumped violently. In an instant, almost the same scene appeared in his mind. A woman in exquisite palace attire, with a graceful figure, stood with a smile on her face. She was graceful and luxurious, but also beautiful and moving. Like the sun in the clouds, she was brilliant and dazzling. No one dared to blaspheme her, but she always had an extreme attraction, making people unconsciously yearn for her. At that time, she had also stood by the lake like this, smiling at him. The two figures gradually overlapped, causing his mind to be in chaos. Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes fiercely. When he opened them again, he found that Chu Liyue had already sat down on the jade wall by the lake. It was paved with carefully selected clear jade. It was clear and moist, and when the water rippled, it could reflect the light of the waves. The two figures that were almost completely merged suddenly separated. He shook his head, but a faint contempt grew in his heart. As expected of an ordinary background, his description and bearing were so careless. If, in the end, there was still a difference between heaven and earth. He turned his head. Chu Liyue sat there, gently swinging his legs, one hand intentionally or unintentionally rubbing the jade beside him. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 582. This Axianli garden had existed when Taizu was still around. When her father bestowed it to her, he had specially renovated it. At that time, he had even specially asked for her opinion. It could be said that everything here was arranged according to Chu Liyue's preferences. Especially this thousand-view garden. It was almost single-handedly arranged by Chu Liyue. The clear jade stones beneath her were piled up in a picturesque manner, outlining exquisite patterns according to different shapes and colors. A gentle breeze blew, and ripples appeared on the lake, spreading to the jade wall and reflecting the light. Chu Liyue looked down, as if attracted by the scenery. The people in charge of guarding the place stared at her for a while and didn't take it to heart. It was said that this Chu Liyue came from a small country outside heaven's canopy, so it was inevitable that she would be curious when she saw this. After a while, Chu Liyue retracted her gaze. Fortunately, the things here hadn't been touched yet. It seemed that Jiang Yuqing hadn't discovered the secret of this place in the past year. Chu Liyue couldn't help but rejoice in her heart. One of the important reasons why she had spent a huge amount of manpower and resources to rebuild Axianli Garden was because many of the hidden mechanisms here had gradually lost their function due to the passage of time. She was familiar with everything here, including these. Back then, Jiang Yuqing often came here to accompany her. Sometimes, when they chatted, he would intentionally or unintentionally ask about it. Chu Liyue chose some unimportant things to tell him. However, she never mentioned some of the more important things. Especially this zither room. Back then, she just wanted to leave herself some space alone, but now it seemed that it was fortunate that she didn't say anything back then. Jiang Yuqing had always thought that the mechanism here was in the 9 winding corridors, but in fact, it was hidden on the lake and the jade wall beside the lake. After confirming that everything was fine, Chu Liyue felt slightly relieved and looked up at the zither room across the lake. Jiang Yuqing just took out the key, opened the door, and walked in with Yuqi Song. The music room was not big. It only had 2 floors. The door was pushed open, and a bitter yet refreshing smell lingered in his nose. Yuqi Song was a little startled. "This is the smell of golden rosin." Jiang Yuqing, who was standing beside him, gently nodded his head. "Not bad." Yuqi Song's eyes fell on a guqin placed in the room. He walked over. This was a phoenix-tailed zither carved from redwood with golden silk. Its entire body was a rich reddish-brown color. When light shone on it, fine golden lines would appear. One of the strings on the zither was already broken. "Every 2 months, I will personally come here to apply golden rosin to this ancient zither," Jiang Yuqing explained. "It was the day after that when I saw the Empress concubine, she mentioned this matter." "I see," Wei Qi Song murmured to himself. Suddenly, he said meaningfully, "The Empress concubine must have felt very uncomfortable at that time, right? This is her favorite guqin." Jiang Yuqing felt that his tone was a little strange, and he felt inexplicably uneasy. He only echoed twice and didn't say anything else. Yuqi Song lifted his foot and left. Jiang Yuqing was about to follow when Yuqi Song suddenly said, "This old man will bring Lu Yu back. Eldest young master Jiang, there's no need to send me off." Jiang Yuqing didn't want to send him off, so he agreed. "In that case, I'll go back later and burn incense on that guqin again." Chu Luiyue looked up and saw Yuqi Song walking towards her alone. Jiang Yuqing didn't follow. Instead, he turned around and returned to the room. Chu Luiyue stood up and was about to speak when she saw that Yuqi Song's expression was a little strange. Her heart skipped a beat. "Master." Yuqi Song only said briefly, "Let's go back." Chu Luiyue didn't ask any more questions. She only nodded and left with Yuqi Song. Jiang Yuqing returned to the zither room. The moment he closed the door, his face darkened. Why did Yuqi Song suddenly ask those questions when he was about to leave? He was clearly fine before. Could it be that he discovered something? But that shouldn't be the case. He had clearly tidied up everything here carefully. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure it out. He could only suppress the doubts in his heart. Perhaps he had been thinking too much recently. On the other side, Chu Luiyue followed Yuqi Song out of Xianli Garden. The 2 of them were silent along the way. When they reached a remote road, Yuqi Song finally stopped. He placed one hand on the wall and bowed slightly. "Master, what's wrong with you?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 583. Yuqi Song's other hand was tightly pressed against his heart as he panted violently. His forehead was covered in sweat and his face was pale. Chu Luiyue was shocked. "Master. What's wrong with you? Could it be that something happened inside just now?" However, when the 2 of them came out, there didn't seem to be anything strange. Crack. A crisp sound was heard. Yuqi Song had used too much force and directly crushed the wall beside him. Chu Luiyue was even more worried. He supported his body from the side and realized that his body was trembling violently. Little Yuya, Wei Qi Song spat out a name from between his teeth with great difficulty. Chu Luiyue was stunned. "It's him. It's really him." Every word Yuqi Song said seemed to be said through clenched teeth, containing deep shock and anger. Chu Luiyue suddenly paused. Could it be that Yuqi Song meant, "It's really him"? Yuqi Song clenched his fist and smashed it against the wall. The entire wall was instantly covered in cracks. Chu Luiyue quickly said, "Master, there are too many people here. Let's go back first." Wei Qi Song finally snapped out of his stupor. He straightened up and slowly pushed Chu Luiyue's hand away. The expression on his face had returned to normal, but there was still a hint of vigilance and hatred in his eyes that had not faded. Chu Luiyue actually wanted to ask what had happened, but this was obviously not the right time. Yu Qi-song stood on the spot for a while before looking at Chu Luiyue and saying apologetically, "Lu Yu, did I scare you?" Chu Luiyue shook his head. "It's good that master is fine." Wei Qi-song's lips curled into a mocking smile. "I'm fine. I just discovered something, Jiang Yuqing. He really deserved to be hacked into pieces. Lu Yu, you can go back first. I want to be alone." Yu Qi-song said tiredly. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment. "Then be careful, master." Yu Qi-song nodded and looked at her with relief. "Lu Yu. Thank you for your understanding." Chu Luiyue smiled and turned to leave. After Chu Luiyue left, Yu Qi-song stood there for a while, then turned and walked in another direction. Chu Luiyue did not return to the Chongshu Pavilion immediately. Instead, he went to the largest auction house in Xiling City, Yuxiang Hall. This auction house was very famous because it could always find rare treasures, so it was very popular. Many of the nobles in Xiling City liked to stroll around here whenever they had nothing to do, hoping to find something they liked. And sometimes, because of the crowd, it would be auctioned at a shocking price. Chu Luiyue had come here several times in disguise, so she had bought quite a few items that she liked. In front of Yuxiang Hall stood two handsome servants. They were both rank 6 martial artists and were not weak. To be able to send such servants was enough to prove the strength of Yuxiang Hall. There were not many guests today. In fact, other than the monthly auction where all the nobles in Xiling City gathered here, Yuxiang Hall was relatively quiet at other times. After all, even if it was just an ordinary auction, ordinary people were not qualified to enter. Chu Luiyue had just walked to the door when the eyes of the two servants lit up. This woman looked to be only 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance was beautiful and her temperament was calm and noble. At first glance, she was very extraordinary. It was just that this face was somewhat unfamiliar. When did such a noble lady appear in Xiling City? "Miss, what's your surname?" One of the servants walked forward with a polite and eager smile on his face. Chu Luiyue said, "Chu." The servant thought that there was indeed no big shot with the surname Chu in the city. Although this person's clothes were simple, his aura was extraordinary. He still had to treat him well. He smiled and explained, "Miss Chu, you look unfamiliar. It should be your first time here, right?" Chu Luiyue nodded. "Since it's your first time here, you might not know much about Yuxiang Hall. First-time guests had to pay a certain fee before entering the room. Asking for money before entering the door. Only one in the entire Xiling City dared to do so. We have a total of 3 types of fees. The first type is the most common, 10 white crystal coins. The second type is 50 white crystal coins. The third type is 100 white crystal coins. The higher the grade, the better your position after entering. Chu Luiyue took out the money from the universe ring. This is 100 white crystal coins. When the servant saw the universe ring on her hand, a look of shock flashed across his eyes. Those who were able to serve here were all discerning people. With a quick glance just now, he could tell that the universe ring was of an extremely high grade. This Miss Chu really hid her strength well. He immediately took the money respectfully. "Miss Chu, please." Another servant came forward and presented a golden plate with a number written on it, 16. "Miss Chu, this is your token. After entering, it will represent your identity." Chu Luiyue kept the golden token. "Miss Chu, please follow me." Chu Luiyue followed the servant all the way inside and soon entered an auction hall. In the middle of the hall was a display stage, surrounded by a ring of neatly arranged seats. There were a total of 3 levels. The seats at the bottom were the most, while the seats at the top were private rooms. The servant brought Chu Luiyue to one of the private rooms. You can overlook the entire auction hall from here. Moreover, your identity will be kept a secret. The servant said respectfully. Chu Luiyue nodded. The auction will start in a while. You can rest here first. If there's anything you like, just raise your token and bid. Everything that you bid for will be sent to you by someone. Those who chose to come to the third level usually didn't lack money. Chapter 584. The hall instantly quietened down as everyone looked over. The auction was about to begin. When the white jade platform came to a stop, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void beside it. Immediately, an old man walked out from within. There was no fluctuation of force around him, but everyone's hearts trembled. A person who could tear the void apart with his bare hands was not to be underestimated. The old man's hair was white, but he was hale and hearty, with a kind and benevolent smile on his face. Seeing him come out, there was a moment of restlessness in the hall. Why is it Elder Song? Doesn't he usually only host big auctions? I don't know. I don't think I've heard of him before. He's one of the top auctioneers in Yuxiang Hall. Today's auction actually managed to invite him. Could it be that there's some rare treasure? Everyone discussed animatedly. Song Zheng looked at the crowd with a smile. Welcome, everyone. Just as everyone guessed, today's auction will be hosted by this old man. Once he opened his mouth, the surrounding noise instantly dissipated. Hearing him say that, many people's faces revealed excitement. For Song Jing to come, there must really be some rare item to be auctioned. Even if they could not bid for it, it was worth it to come today. Yuxiang Hall's rule, the highest bidder wins. I believe everyone is already anxious from waiting. This old man will not waste any more words and will directly start the auction. As soon as he finished speaking, a green jade bottle appeared on the white jade platform beside him. This is a 5th grade clear recovery pill. It can increase the success rate of breaking through to a 6th grade warrior to 90%. Starting price, 200 white crystal coins. 200 white crystal coins might be a lot in the eyes of ordinary people, but here, it was merely a starting price. Moreover, such an elixir was still very attractive to many cultivators. Just as Song Zhang's voice fell, someone immediately started bidding, 210. 230, 245. Chu Luiyue took a look. Those who bid were basically those people on the first floor. Those who sat there were basically itinerant cultivators in Xiling City or people from small families. Generally speaking, to be able to sit here, they had a certain amount of power and wealth. However, compared to the people on the 2 floors above, it was far from enough. Those who could go up to the 2nd floor were basically the children of influential families. For example, Jiang Yuji and Xiahou Chunan. They had the support of their families and rich resources. Basically, they would not bid for things like pills in this kind of place. As for the 3rd floor, needless to say, after a round of bidding, the clear recovery pill was finally bought by a young man at the price of 300 white crystal coins. This could be considered a good start. Soon, the 2nd item was pushed up. It was a broadsword that was entirely bronze in color. Its aura was astonishing. This is the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. It cut through hair like mud, extremely sharp. Starting price, 500 white crystal coins. Each bid must be at least 50 white crystal coins. This was only the 2nd auction item, and the starting price had already risen to 500 white crystal coins per kilogram, which was really shocking. Chu Luiyue stared at the sword for a while. It's a good sword. The value of this sword was definitely far more than 500 white crystal coins. If not for the fact that she already had the long yuan sword, she would have really wanted to bid for this sword. She touched her chin and suddenly had an idea. Oh right. Chang Wanzhou doesn't seem to have a suitable yuan instrument yet. This sword seems to be quite suitable for him. Girl, bid for this sword. Taizu's voice suddenly sounded. This is a good material. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Taizu, what do you mean? Shengguan Jing laughed out loud. This is the rare K-Ling bronze. This K-Ling bronze is still in its original form. As long as you polish it properly, you can make the world's best sword. This item can only be found by chance. No matter how much it costs, just bid for it. Chu Luiyue lightly nodded. Okay. Since even Taizu praised it, it proves that this item is indeed rare. After polishing it, it's not bad to give it to Chang Wanzhou to use. Second floor. When Jiang Yuji saw the sword, her eyes immediately lit up. Tingan, what do you think of that sword? Xiahou Tingan looked at her expression and understood what was going on. The heavy sword has no edge, and it's simple yet majestic. It's indeed a good sword. Do you like it? Jiang Yuji hurriedly nodded. Yeah. Although the sword I used before isn't bad, compared to this, it's a far cry. Just the aura alone is a few levels lower. If I can get my hands on this sword, my strength will definitely rise to the next level. Jiang Yuji couldn't hide her excitement. I must bid for it. From the start to the end, her eyes never left the cloud sky copper sword. Xiahou Tingan could tell that she really liked it. He paused for a moment and smiled. After pondering for a moment, he said with a smile, since you like it so much, I'll bid for it and give it to you. Jiang Yuji was shocked. Really? The starting price of this sword is 500 white crystal coins. If you like it, it's naturally good. It's worth this price. As long as you're happy, the amount isn't important. Xiahou Tingan spoke confidently. Ever since he caused a ruckus at 100 Herbs building, his father gave him quite a bit of money to make peace with Jiang Yuji. This time, he managed to invite her out with much difficulty, so he naturally had to perform well. He touched his interspatial ring. This money is more than enough to bid for a sword. Hearing him say this, Jiang Yuji was elated as she hugged his arm and acted coquettishly. Tingan, you're so nice. Xiahou Tingan smiled gently and started to raise his paddle. At this point, the cloud sky copper sword had already started to be auctioned, 550. 600, 650. There were quite a few people participating in the auction, and the price quickly went up. Xiahou Tingan directly said, 800 white crystals. As soon as these words were spoken, the hall fell silent for a moment, and everyone looked over. Just like that, he added 150 white crystal coins to the price. That was a huge sum of money. Songjing smiled and glanced at Xiahou Tingan, 800 white crystals. Does anyone else want to increase the price? After a short pause, a burly man with a full beard on the first floor continued shouting 850. Xiahou Tingan smiled confidently, 1,000 white crystals. The crowd was shocked again. That was a full double of what he had earned. He increases the price so harshly every time. This shows how determined he is to get this cloud sky copper sword. That burly man hesitated for a long time before he finally clenched his teeth and increased the price, 1,100. This price had basically exceeded what most people on the first floor could accept. Xiahou Tingan said without hesitation again, 1,300. In the hall, only the two of them were left bidding. That burly man looked conflicted, but he could only punch him in the end and choose to give up. A victorious smile appeared on Xiahou Tingan's face. But before he could smile, he heard a clear voice coming from the third floor, 2,000. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 585. 2,000 White Crystals. The crowd almost thought that they had heard wrongly as they looked up in shock. They wanted to see who was so generous. But as the design of the rooms on the third floor was very ingenious, the people sitting below couldn't tell which room the voice came from. To protect the privacy of the guests on the third floor, Yuseong Hall's rooms were built with special materials. Anyone's voice would have a strange change when it came from inside, making it hard for people to distinguish. Even if they were very familiar with the room, they wouldn't be able to tell whose voice it was when they stood outside the room. Therefore, although the crowd was filled with curiosity, they were unable to find out who the bidder was. The smile on Xiahou Tingan's face froze. He was first shocked before he was enraged. Who exactly is it? They're actually bidding with me at this time. They even directly raised the price to this level. This cloud sky copper sword is not bad, but it's at most worth 1,000 white crystals. I previously bid 1,300, and it's already considered a premium. I didn't expect someone to bid 2,000. What's wrong with this person? Jiang Yuji knitted her brows, and disgust flashed across her face. Who's so daring to openly snatch my item? Since the other party is on the third floor, they can definitely see that Xiahou Tingan is with me. They seem to be bidding with Xiahou Tingan, but in actual fact, they don't even care about me. Jiang Yuji was spoiled since she was young. Recently, because of her relationship with Jiang Yuqing, everyone tried to please her. She had long treated herself as noble as a princess and didn't care about anyone else. However, Xiahou Tingan still had brains. Those who could go up to the third floor were either rich or respectable. Since they dared to say this, they definitely had a certain level of confidence. Yuji, don't be anxious. Since the other party wants to bid, we'll fight with them. As he spoke, Xiahou Tingan raised his card again, 2,100. When Song Jing heard the price of 2,000 white crystals, the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. Now that he saw Xiahou Tingan increasing the price, he was naturally even happier. 2,100, is there anyone else who wants to bid? Although this was said to the crowd, everyone understood that this was actually said to the mysterious guest on the third floor. Those on the first floor had long withdrawn from the competition. There weren't many people on the second floor today, but most of them knew Xiahou Tingan and Jiang Yuji. They would be crazy to provoke these two people over this sword. Forget about Xiahou Tingan, but the key is Jiang Yuji. They couldn't wait to curry favor with Jiang Yuqing's younger sister, so how could they take the initiative to offend her? Thus, the people on the second floor all fell silent and watched from the sidelines. That left only the one on the third floor. 2,500. A lazy voice sounded from within. Even though his voice had changed, it was not difficult to hear the indifference of the speaker, as if he did not take this matter to heart at all. However, he added 400 white crystal coins just by casually opening his mouth. When there were more than 1,000 points, it was normal for them to compete with each other. However, the current price. This was no longer a competition for this sword. Xiahou Tingan's face was tense as he gripped the armrest of the chair tightly with one hand, and his knuckles turned white. 2,500 father did give me quite a bit of money, but this price. He glanced from the corner of his eye and saw Jiang Yuji knitting her brows in displeasure. His heart instantly skipped a beat. It was the same situation at 100 Herbs Building that day. After that, I finally managed to pacify Jiang Yuji with much difficulty. If it happens again today, I can't bear the consequences. Xiahou Tingan clenched his teeth. Anyway, father already said that the money spent on Jiang Yuji would be transferred to another account. What do I have to be afraid of? As long as I can get Jiang Yuji, I'll be connected to the Jiang family after the marriage is settled. Do I have to be afraid that I won't be able to get back this loss in the future? Thinking of this, he made up his mind. 2,800. As expected, Jiang Yuji's expression turned for the better. Yuji, don't worry. I let you down for the previous incident. This time, I definitely won't. 5,000. Before Xiahou Tingan could finish his sentence, the other party actually increased the price again. The crowd gasped in unison. 5,000 white crystals. This person is too. This sword is not bad, but 5,000 white crystals. That's ridiculous. The crowd finally couldn't help but become restless. Who exactly is that person? How can he be so generous? 5,000 white crystals. Just for this sword. I really don't understand the world of the rich. Could it be that their money grew on trees? Noisy discussions could be heard clearly. Chu Luyue, who was sitting in the room, raised his brows slightly and smiled. I don't know if other people's money grows on trees. She only knew that it was really easy for her to earn money. When I first came to Xiling, I couldn't even fork out 10 white crystals as a toll fee, and even had to fight with others to earn it. Now, it hasn't even been a month, but I'm already rich. Actually, I still don't know how much money I have. But that's not important. The important thing is, it feels good to have money to spend. Xiahou Tingan felt like he was hit by a stick, and his entire person was dazed. When he shouted 2,800 just now, he still thought that he could fight with the other party if he clenched his teeth. However, he didn't expect the other party to directly raise it to 5,000. At the side, Jiang Yuji was clearly stunned by the other party's inhumane way of increasing the price, and she didn't say anything for a while. Seeing that the two of them didn't react, the voice sounded again. Are you still playing? If you don't, I'll do it myself. Xiahou Tingan's face turned pale. I'll do it. 5,000. Before he could say anything, the person continued. 10,000. How indecisive. Chu Luyue touched his chin. This time, Xiahou Tingan can finally shut up, right? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 586. Not only did Xiahou Tingan shut his mouth. Everyone in the auction hall quietened down. The air seemed to have frozen at that moment. Everyone's expression was very interesting. Even the experienced Song Zheng's eyes froze for a moment. What kind of operation is this? Not only did he take the initiative to make the other party raise the price, but he even doubled the price before the other party finished speaking. He doesn't even care about Xiahou Tingan. Quite a few people secretly glanced at Xiahou Tingan and indeed saw that his expression was very ugly, as if he had swallowed a fly. Brutal. Too brutal. How aggrieved must Xiahou Tingan be? Not only is the person bidding with me rich, but he also has guts. At this point, Song Zheng had already recovered his senses as he coughed and continued asking. 10,000 white crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to continue bidding? Nobody said anything. Xiahou Tingan almost broke the armrest of the chair. He felt that he had never been as conflicted as he was now in his 20-odd years of life. Don't increase the price. Jiang Yuji is sitting at the side, and I previously promised to buy this sword for her. Increase the price. I don't even have that much money on me. Besides, it's hard for people not to notice such a large sum of money even if it's transferred to another account. At this point, Xiahou Tingan couldn't back down. 10,000 white crystals going once. Xiahou Tingan took a deep breath in and forced himself to calm down as he looked at Jiang Yuji beside him. He looked at Jiang Yuji and said warmly, Yuji, do you still want that sword? Jiang Yuji knitted her thin brows tightly. Of course. Actually, at the start, I just purely liked it. But now, I'm fighting for my pride. Xiahou Tingan's head hurt, but he could only persuade her patiently. Yuji, it's naturally not a problem for me to help you bid for the sword. But the key now is, we don't know who that person is. Think about it. If the other party can see us, he definitely knows our identities, but he still dares to do this. His identity must be extraordinary. Jiang Yuji knitted her brows even tighter. So what? Am I, Jiang Yuji, afraid of him? 10,000 white crystals going twice. Xiahou Tingan choked as he forcefully suppressed the annoyance in his heart and softly persuaded her. Yuji. Of course, we're not afraid of him. But the key point is that the timing is very sensitive now. You also know that the marriage between the third princess and your brother has been put on the agenda. The more it was like this, the more people were staring at him. If we really spent 10,000 white crystal coins to buy this sword today, what would everyone say if word got out? People will definitely say that you're a spendthrift. What if it affects your brother? Upon hearing him mention Jiang Yuqing, Jiang Yuji's expression changed slightly. She didn't care about other people, but her brother's future and reputation were extremely important. Seeing that she finally gave in, Xiahou Tingan continued. You also know that the more powerful a person is, the more careful they have to be with their words and actions. If your brother knew that you gave up this sword for him, he would definitely be very gratified. Once things are settled, wouldn't it be easy for you to get whatever you want? These last words finally made Jiang Yuqing change his mind. All right. Let's forget about it this time. Xiahou Tingan's worried heart finally relaxed. 10,000 white crystal coins going thrice, deal. Jiang Yuji glanced at the cloud sky copper sword indignantly. If I find out who it is, I definitely won't let him off. Xiahou Tingan suddenly thought of something and suddenly leaned toward Jiang Yuqing's ear to whisper something. Jiang Yuji was shocked. Are you serious? Is this useful? Xiahou Tingan clenched his fists and hammered his chest. Don't worry about me. Chu Luyue crossed his arms as his gaze swept past the two of them in a seemingly smiling manner. These two people seem to really want to know who stole them. If they know that it's me, I wonder what kind of expression they will have. Originally, I bought this cloud sky copper sword because I listened to Taizu's suggestion. But now, it seems like I've profited since I can anger Jiang Yuqing and Xiahou Tingan at the same time. The auction continued. Some of the items that were presented later on weren't bad. But with the previous commotion, the subsequent auction seemed much calmer. Chu Luyue had also been watching, but she didn't see any treasures that caught her eye, so she didn't bid again. Originally, she wanted to leave early, but thinking that Songjing was here and that there might be a final treasure, she continued to wait patiently. In another private room on the same floor, Jian Fengqi was leaning against the chair lazily. Shui Lu walked over from the side of the window and sat down beside him. Her delicate and charming face was full of smiles. I didn't expect to be able to watch a good show for free on this trip today. I really didn't come for nothing. Jian Fengqi's lips curved up into a sinister smile as he held the fan in his hand and lightly tapped it on his knee. How did Xiahou Tingan offend you? Why are you so happy to see him suffer? Shui Lu rolled her eyes. However, she was born very beautiful, and her aura was also good. Hence, her rolling eyes looked rather clean and beautiful. That idiot previously booked my place and wanted to listen to music, but he wasn't honest in the end. When she first came to Xiling, there were indeed quite a few people who wanted to take advantage of her. However, Chun Feng Restaurant's people weren't to be trifled with. After a series of attacks, nobody dared to do so anymore. Jian Fengqi was a little surprised. He has the guts. Shui Lu chuckled. He just drank 2 more glasses of wine, and he doesn't know who he is anymore. He keeps mentioning the Xiaohou family, but he's really powerful. You didn't teach him a lesson. Why do you think he stayed at home for 3 months and didn't go out? Jian Fengqi gave her a thumbs up. Little Lu is indeed the best. Shui Lu slapped his hand away. Don't give me that. Actually, I don't mind telling you that compared to seeing Xiahou Tingan suffer, I prefer to see Jiang Yuji so angry that she can't speak. Jian Fengqi seemed to have expected this as he smiled. Isn't it because she offended? That person didn't even take it to heart, but you're still brooding over it. Even until now, Shui Lu was still angry at Jiang Yuji. Shui Lu sneered. People like Jiang Yuji. Someone has to teach her a lesson. Now that she has Jiang Yuqing as her backing, she's very powerful and wants to do whatever she wants in Xiling City. She has countless enemies, but she doesn't even know it. What a joke. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows slightly. You've bought what you wanted to buy today and watched the show. Are you happy now? Actually, I really want to know who won the bid for the sword just now. Before he could finish his sentence, his gaze suddenly turned cold. He hurriedly stood up, walked to the window, and looked at the display stage. Shui Lu was shocked. What's wrong? At the same time, Chu Luyue, who was in the other room, also stood up and stared at the cage that suddenly appeared on the stage in disbelief. A woman was trapped in the huge metal cage. Her clothes were tattered, and she looked haggard. Her long hair hung down and covered half of her face. However, Chu Luyue still recognized her at one glance. That's actually Mu Hongyu. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 587. Her eyes were closed and she was motionless, as if she had fainted. In an instant, countless questions flashed across Chu Luyue's mind. Shouldn't Mu Hongyu be in country Yao Chen's imperial capital now? Why would she appear here? Moreover, she looked so pathetic. That familiar face had lost a lot of weight and there were bloodstains on her body. Chu Luyue's heart seemed to be gripped tightly by something. He couldn't wait to rush over and bring Mu Hongyu out of that cage. Seeing such a huge iron cage suddenly appear on the stage with a young lady trapped inside, the entire auction hall fell into a strange silence. Song Zheng looked around and seemed to be very satisfied with this effect. Everyone, this is the finale of today's auction, the faint yuan body. Just as his voice fell, it was as if a stone was thrown into a lake, causing countless waves. The entire hall was in an uproar. Faint yuan body. Is it the rumored special physique that allows one to travel through space at will? Isn't that something that only exists in legends? I heard that this physique was completely extinct 1,000 years ago. Could it be that a new faint yuan body has appeared in the world now? Since Yuxiang Hall dares to put her up for auction, they must have already confirmed it. No wonder they invited Song Jing today. Such a big piece of news, but they didn't reveal it at all. That's strange too. Yuxiang Hall would usually only display such a rare existence in big auctions. Why would they randomly choose to do it today? If they released the news first, there would definitely be people from all over the world who heard the news. At that time, wouldn't they be able to get a better price? Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat, and the blood in her body seemed to have frozen. Song Zhang's words mean. Mu Hongyu actually has the faint yuan body. How is this possible? She had interacted with Mu Hongyu for so long, but she had never discovered this point. In fact, it was very likely that Mu Hongyu herself didn't know about it. What had happened in such a short period of time? How did she cross the heavens canopy and come here? How did she obtain the faint yuan body? Also, why was she brought back by the people of Yuxiang Hall and trapped in a cage to be auctioned? Chu Liyue's eyes were fixed on the stage, and his anger surged. Songjing said, "Everyone, don't worry. Yu Xiang Hall has already confirmed that this woman indeed has the faint Yuan body. It was rumored that cultivators who possessed the faint Yuan body could travel through different spaces at will. The stronger one was, the greater the distance one could travel. According to our investigation, this woman's strength is at the peak of Tier 5 and can travel within several dozen miles. If his guess was correct, once she broke through to become a rank 6 warrior, she would be able to teleport anywhere within 100 miles. The noisy hall gradually quieted down. After hearing Song Zhang's words, many people's faces were filled with surprise and envy. Such a physique was extremely precious. However, he did not know where this woman came from. Yu Xiang Hall actually dared to auction her with such great fanfare. As if he saw through everyone's doubts, Songjing explained, "According to our investigation, this woman snuck in from outside the heaven's canopy. By chance, she was discovered by our people and brought back. When we found her, she was already on the verge of death. After a few days of recuperation, she finally recovered." Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched as he listened. Hearing Song Zhang's words, could it be that the people of Yuxiang Hall had saved Mu Hongyu? But she did not change her clothes, and her complexion did not look any better. Furthermore, it was extremely humiliating for her to be auctioned off like an item in an iron cage. However, when the people in the auction hall heard this, they all looked relieved. Many people's eyes lit up, as if they were eager to bid for Mu Hongyu. In fact, the reason why they had such a reaction was because there was a law in the Tianling dynasty. Anyone who snuck in from the heaven's canopy would automatically be demoted to a slave. Such people had no status and no rights to speak of. Once they were discovered, most of them would end up very miserably. They would either be killed or sold. Obviously, because Mu Hongyu had the faint Yuan body, she was specially brought back by the people of Yuxiang Hall to be auctioned off as a slave. Without a doubt, to have such a slave was the dream of countless people. Whether it was to nurture her to be their helper or to use the bloodline power of the faint Yuan body to improve their own strength, it was full of temptation. It was no wonder that everyone was so excited. At this moment, Mu Hongyu, who was lying in the cage, suddenly moved and opened her eyes with difficulty. When the crowd saw this movement, they all quieted down. Chu Luyue took a step forward and placed his hands on the window, watching Mu Hongyu closely. Mu Hongyu woke up in a daze and looked around. This seems to be an auction hall. After being stunned for a short while, she quickly reacted. That's right. A few days ago, she met a group of people who brought her back. But after that, she was in a coma and only had some vague memories left. When she woke up again, she was in this situation. She lowered her head to look at herself and realized that her clothes were still the same as before. She heaved a sigh of relief. But at the same time, she realized something more important. She was being auctioned off. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her, making her feel uneasy. Her hand trembled and a golden mane bear cub appeared in front of her. It protected Mu Hongyu behind it and looked at the people around it with a fierce expression. Its body was full of injuries, new injuries stacked on top of old ones, and almost none of them were in good condition. During this period of time, it had obviously suffered a lot. "Tsong tsong!" Mu Hongyu exclaimed. Looking at the injuries on its body, her heart ached and her eyes turned red instantly. She then remembered that when she was in a coma, Tsong tsong seemed to have been protecting her. It had been trying its best to stop those people from getting close to her, which caused it to be covered in injuries. "Tsong tsong, come here." Mu Hongyu hugged the golden mane bear cub tightly in her arms. The golden mane bear cub resisted at first and wanted to continue protecting her, but in the end, it obediently lay on her shoulder. Mu Hongyu looked at the countless injuries on its body and her heart ached so much that she cried. If she wasn't so useless, it wouldn't have. now that they were trapped here, there was no way for them to escape. She didn't even know where this place was. Songjing raised his voice. I don't need to explain how precious the faint yuan body is. There is no starting price for this auction. Everyone can bid as you wish. The highest bidder wins. Just as he finished speaking, a voice came from the crowd. 100,000 white crystals. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 588. The voice came from the second floor. Chu Luiyue took a look. It was a man in his 30s with an unfamiliar face. The moment he opened his mouth, someone from the third floor also shouted. 150,000. The people sitting on the first floor were speechless. This auction basically had no place for them to participate in. However, it seemed that the people on the second floor were going to fight fiercely for it. The faint yuan body was indeed very attractive. The first bid was 100,000 white crystal coins. In the blink of an eye, the price had increased to 150,000 white crystal coins. However, this was just the beginning. After this, people continued to raise the price. There was almost no pause in the bidding. Moreover, the extent of each increase was extremely terrifying. 200,000. 300,000, 500,000. In just a short while, the price had increased a few times. There was no lack of rich people in Xiling City. In the face of such a precious faint yuan body, what was money to them? Shui Lu walked to Jian Fengqi's side and followed his line of sight. She was deep in thought. You know this girl? Jian Fengqi's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. He nodded his head with his chin clenched. His icy eyes were filled with a biting cold murderous intent. Shui Lu was slightly shocked. She had never seen such an expression on Jian Fengqi's face. That girl, who is she? Just now, Songjing said that the girl was smuggled in from outside Heaven's Canopy, so Jian Fengqi knew her when he was outside Heaven's Canopy. Shui Lu looked for a while and said. Her injuries are quite serious. Although there was still some distance between them, it was not hard to imagine what kind of ordeal she had gone through. She looks like she's only in her teens. I really don't know how she crossed Heaven's Canopy alone. Shui Lu said softly. Jian Fengqi's expression turned even colder. He gradually tightened his grip on the bone fan. His fingertips turned white and he almost crushed the fan. No one knew that when he saw that the person trapped in the iron cage was Mu Hongyu, he was furious. At that moment, he almost wanted to rush out and smash the cage into pieces. In his impression, Mu Hongyu was always as brilliant and passionate as a flame. Suddenly seeing her like this was really hard for him to accept. His chest seemed to be blocked by something, and he felt suffocated and uncomfortable. Shui Lu's voice became much gentler. Since she's your friend, why don't we take a picture of her and bring her back? Jian Fengqi finally spoke coldly as he emphasized every word. She's not an item. I know. But now that Songjing said that she was smuggled over, everyone would think that she was a slave. This was the only way to save her. Don't tell me that you intend to create havoc in Yuxiang Hall and forcefully take her away. That was simply a pipe dream. Jian Fengqi was very powerful, but 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. This was Yuxiang Hall's territory, who could be their opponent? Moreover, Yuxiang Hall did not lack top experts. Jian Fengqi could be taken down by a few random people. Jian Fengqi's sword-like eyebrows were tightly knitted together. The sound of bidding continued outside, and it was very ear-piercing. 1 million. 1,200,000. 1,250,000. He looked at Mu Hongyu. She sat alone in the iron cage, hugging the golden mane bear cub tightly in her arms. She was lonely, cold, and at a loss. His lips moved. 5 million. The low and cold voice instantly spread throughout the entire hall. This sentence was like a sharp sickle, instantly cutting off the voices of many people. The originally noisy auction hall immediately became silent, as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water on it. 5 million, white crystal coins. This was an astronomical figure. Even the noble families in Shilling City might not be able to take out so much money at once. Those people who were still quite confident before all wilted. Even Song Zheng was shocked. This number was already the highest bid that Yuxiang Hall had ever seen this year. After being stunned for a moment, he suppressed his wildly beating heart and raised his voice. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? 5 million going once. Someone actually bid 5 million. Chu Luiyue, who was waiting for an opportunity to make a move, was also shocked. From 1 million, it suddenly increased to 5 million. This person clearly wanted to bid for Mu Hongyu at all costs. In Shilling City, there were not many people who could afford this. Who could it be? Chu Luiyue fell into deep thought, and countless faces flashed across her mind. But because this private room was too private, she could not guess who the other party was. After all, the temptation of the faint yuan body was too great. She was somewhat anxious as she paced around the room. Previously, she had planned to bid for Mu Hongyu directly. This was undoubtedly the best way. Moreover, she could afford to pay for it. But now that this person had made a move, Chu Luiyue was somewhat hesitant. She was not worried about the money, but that the other party would endlessly increase the price. After thinking about it, Chu Luiyue still chose to bid 6 million. The crowd, who originally thought that 5 million would be the final bid, gasped in unison. Who is so generous to increase the price by so much? In comparison, the previous auctions that were worth tens of thousands were nothing more than child's play. Shui Lu blinked her eyes. That's strange, who else would compete with you? Jian Fengqi was recently rich and could afford this amount of money, but why was the other party so generous? Jian Fengqi was about to increase the price, but suddenly thought of something, and his expression turned serious. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 589. Speaking of which, there was indeed another person in West Hill who could fork out so much money in one go. Moreover, that person would definitely think of a way to bid for Mu Hongyu. Chu Luiyue. However, he did not know if the person who was still bidding was her or not. Why, did you think of something? Shui Lu asked curiously. Jian Fengqi's fingers unconsciously rubbed the cold bone fan slowly. There's no way to know who's in the private room on the 3rd floor, right? Shui Lu immediately understood. You want to find out who's in the private room? Jian Fengqi nodded, then shook his head. No, I just want to confirm if it's her. If it was really Chu Luiyue, then he could give up on the competition. If it wasn't her, then he had to win this auction no matter what. Do you have a way? He looked at Shui Lu. Do you really think I'm omnipotent? Yuxiang Hall is heavily guarded. To find out who's in the private room on the 3rd floor is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Shui Lu glared at him. Jian Fengqi pondered for a moment, then his eyes suddenly lit up. I got it. 6,600,000. He spoke again. Chu Luiyue rubbed her forehead. The other party had indeed increased the price again. If this continued, who knows, I'm determined to win this last auction today. If anyone continues to bid, I'll add 1/10 of their bid. The other party quickly added. Chu Luiyue was suddenly stunned, and a ray of light flashed across her mind. This is Jian Fengqi. Other than him, there wouldn't be a second person who would say that. Chu Luyue was surprised and delighted. Jian Fengqi's words were obviously testing her. She paused for a moment, then said, "If that's the case, I'll withdraw." It's really her. Jian Fengqi suddenly heaved a sigh of relief, and felt a chill run down his spine. Only then did he realize that his back was covered in cold sweat. Probably because he was nervous, he pursed his lips, and was a little surprised. He had never felt this way before, he didn't realize it earlier, but now that he thought about it, his reaction seemed to be a little overboard. "Can you rest assured now?" Shui Lu couldn't help but tease him. "You have to be honest when you return. What exactly is the relationship between you and that woman?" Jian Fengqi had always walked through hundreds of flowers, but not a single leaf stuck to him. This was probably the first time he was this nervous over a woman. Jian Fengqi's lips curled up. What other relationship could there be? Of course, we're friends. However, Shui Lu didn't believe him. "I'm also your friend, but why haven't I seen you this nervous before?" Jian Fengqi glanced at her coldly. Shui Lu raised her brows. "It doesn't matter if you don't want to tell me. I'll ask her myself later." Void Yuan body. "You have good eyesight." Jian Fengqi was speechless. He didn't know about this before. However, when he saw that Shui Lu seemed to have made up her mind, he couldn't be bothered to explain. The most important thing now was to take Mu Hongyu away as soon as possible. At this moment, Song Zheng had already shouted twice, but no one answered. He looked around. 6,600,000 white crystal coins going thrice. Deal. After Mu Hongyu's auction ended, a strange sound suddenly came from Chu Liyue's private room. She turned around and saw a black hole suddenly appearing on the ground. A squarish white jade stone slowly rose from the ground. This was the tool that Yuxiang Hall used to collect money. Chu Liyue placed her universe ring on it. With a thought, 10,000 white crystal coins fell into the square white jade stone. Then, that thing fell down. After a while, a long sword was sent up. It was the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Chu Liyue's spirit was lifted, and she gently picked up the sword. This sword was bronze in color, and only the tip of the sword seemed to be suffused with a faint peacock blue. Previously, she couldn't see it clearly from a distance. Now that she held it in her hand, she could clearly feel the weight of this sword. Chu Liyue already had a feeling in her heart, the 10,000 white crystal coins were worth it. She played with it for a while more, then put it away. The black iron cage in the middle of the auction hall had already disappeared. It should have been sent to the person who bought Mu Hongyu. Thinking of Mu Hongyu's miserable and pitiful appearance just now, Chu Liyue felt as if her heart had been stabbed by something. She quickly left the private room. Although there were many private rooms on the third floor, they were all independent of each other. Every private room had a direct connection to the 2 floors below. Therefore, no matter if it was going up or down, entering or exiting, it could guarantee maximum privacy. Chu Liyue directly chose to leave Yuxiang Hall. When she walked to the door, many people had already left. Chu Liyue mixed in with the crowd, occasionally attracting some gazes. However, those people only glanced at her a few times before retracting their gazes. Chu Liyue heard them clearly. They were still discussing what happened at the auction hall just now, and the rumored faint yuan body. In less than a day, the entire imperial city would know about this. Chu Liyue also walked out of the door and waited quietly at a spot not far away. After a long time, when most of the people had left, Jian Fengqi's figure finally appeared in Chu Liyue's sight. Shui Lu was beside him. Anne. Mu Hongyu. Her face was pale, and she was limping beside Jian Fengqi. However, the expression on her face was very excited, and she was chatting enthusiastically with Shui Lu, beside her. Is this really the Tianling dynasty? Then, where's Lu Yu? Isn't she here too? Chu Luiyue immediately walked forward. Hong Yu. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 590. Mu Hongyu immediately looked up when she heard the voice. Lu Yu. A surprised smile bloomed on her face as she quickly ran toward Chu Luiyue. She stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Chu Luiyue quickly went forward and supported her. Hong Yu, you're injured now, be careful, Lu Yu. Lu Yu. It's really you. Mu Hongyu did not care about her injury. She looked at Chu Luiyue from head to toe with joy, then hugged her tightly. That's great. As she hugged her, tears fell from her eyes again. I thought I'd never see you guys again. She thought she was dead for sure. She did not expect that in the blink of an eye, not only did she escape from that cage, but she also saw her closest friend. Chu Luiyue patted her back gently. It's okay, I'm here. She comforted Mu Hongyu as she gave Jian Fengqi a grateful smile. Young Master Jian, thank you so much this time. Jian Fengqi's thin lips curved slightly. You're welcome. Just give me the money later. Shui Lu glanced at him. Pfft. He was so anxious to save her just now, but in the blink of an eye, he put on airs. Chu Luiyue smiled. Sure. Jian Fengqi was stunned. He did not expect Chu Luiyue to be so straightforward. Shui Lu lowered her voice and reminded him. Have you thought it through? If she gives you the money, little Hongyu will have nothing to do with you anymore. Just now when they went to pick up Mu Hongyu, Shui Lu had already found out about Mu Hongyu's situation in a short period of time. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows slightly. That doesn't sound wrong, but why does it sound so weird? Actually, if I think about it carefully, it's not a loss to exchange more than 6 million white crystals for Mu Hongyu's faint yuan body. Mu Hongyu's emotions came and went quickly. After crying for a while and venting all the grievances and longing, she felt better. Sensing that she had calmed down, Chu Luiyue then gently said, Don't worry. Hongyu, let's go home first, okay? She really needed to recover from her injuries as soon as possible. Mu Hongyu finally let go of her, but she still held on to her hand tightly. She quickly wiped away the tears on her face and nodded vigorously. Okay. After they left, Jiang Yuji's group. Seeing their backs, Jiang Yuji frowned in confusion. Isn't that Jian? The one beside him seemed to be Shui Lu from Spring Breeze House. Just now, when she was following behind them, she just happened to see the two of them walking out with the faint yuan body woman. Is Jian Fengqi the one who bid for that girl? At first, she was a little shocked, but on second thought, Jian Fengqi did have the wealth and courage to do so. He had always been unrestrained and did things based on what he liked. There are so many rich and powerful people in Xiling City, and most of them are restricted by their family's rules. Only Jian Fengqi lives his life freely and ostentatiously. Besides, who didn't know that he had won a huge sum of money from betting on Chu Luiyue winning first place a few days ago? But the girl he met after he came out, as she was quite far away and Jian Fengqi and Shui Lu blocked her view, Jiang Yuji didn't see that person's face clearly. However, it was clearly a girl. Not only is that girl familiar with Jian Fengqi, but she also seems to know the girl who was auctioned. If not, the two of them wouldn't be so intimate. Also, I feel that the back view is a little familiar as if I've seen it somewhere before. Yuji, what are you looking at? Xiahou Tingan walked out and followed her gaze. There was no one there, so he couldn't help but ask curiously. Jiang Yuji fell into deep thought. The 6 million just now was Jian Fengqi. Xiahou Tingan was shocked. It's actually him. No wonder he's so generous. A tinge of jealousy and injustice instantly arose in Xiahou Tingan's heart. Our statuses are clearly similar, but it's very difficult for me to buy a sword with 10,000 white crystals. On the other hand, Jian Fengqi casually threw out millions. The difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth. Xiahou Tingan forced a smile and said, "You don't know this either. He has always been like this. Just because he's Dragon Teeth Mountain's young master, he can squander as much as he wants." Jiang Yuji lightly snorted. That's because he can earn it. If not, do you think Jian Shai will really let him go like this? Xiahou Tingan was stumped, and his face looked awful. What does Jiang Yuji mean? She doesn't like him. Jiang Yuji didn't notice the change in his expression and unconsciously muttered, "But that girl." "Which girl?" asked Xiahou Tingan. Jiang Yuji briefly described the scene she just saw to him. Xiahou Tingan kept quiet for a while and suddenly thought of something. "Oh right, I just went to find out who else came today." "Guess who else came today?" "Who?" "A girl with the surname Chu." Xiahou Tingan pulled Jiang Yuji to the side and lowered his voice after confirming that there was no one around. Yuxiang Hall's people are very tight-lipped. No matter how you ask, they definitely won't reveal the identities of the VIPs in the rooms. But you can ask the page boys at the door. This was the method he previously mentioned to Jiang Yuji. Anyone who comes here has to enter from the main door, and the page boys remember it clearly. We've already seen the people on the first and second floors. The remaining people that we haven't seen are definitely in the rooms. I just went to ask, and there's indeed a new guest today. If I didn't guess wrongly, it should be Chu Luiyue. Xiahou Tingan couldn't hide his agitation. Actually, it wasn't easy to ask this, and he still spent a lot of effort. But now, it seems like it's worth it. Jiang Yuji first found it strange before she was shocked. Putting all these pieces together, we can basically guess it pretty much. This means that the girl I saw just now is Chu Luiyue. She does have a close relationship with Jian Fengqi. Besides, she also came from outside Heaven's canopy. Perhaps, they originally knew each other. Not only that, but I suspect that she's also the person who snatched the Cloud Sky Copper Sword. Xiahou Tingan said in a low voice. She did something similar the last time. Who knows if she'll do it a second time? I already said that the sword isn't worth 10,000 white crystals. Why would someone fork out so much money? She's clearly targeting us. No matter if it's towards me or Jiang Yuji. She's too arrogant. Jiang Yuji's expression changed, and she clenched her teeth. You're right. It must be her. Most people in Xiling City will give in to her on account of my brother, but only that Chu Luiyue. I want to find her. Jiang Yuji was filled with anger as she turned around to chase after her. Xiahou Tingan hurriedly pulled her back. Yuji, we can't go now. Did you forget what I told you previously? Jiang Yuji paused in her footsteps. Besides, she did spend money today and properly bid for that sword. It's really unreasonable for us to go over just like that. Jiang Yuji's chest violently heaved up and down, and she said hatefully after a while. I definitely won't let her off so easily next time. I'll go and find my brother now. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 591. Chu Luiyue brought Mu Hongyu back to the residence. Jian Fengqi and Shui Lu also followed along. Chu Luiyue first let Mu Hongyu take a bath, then carefully treated her wounds, applied medicine, and bandaged them. She also took out a new set of clothes for her to change into. She also helped the golden mane bear cub treat its wounds. Fortunately, its skin was thick and its recovery ability was very strong. Mu Hongyu confirmed with Chu Luyue that it was fine several times before her heart finally relaxed. After cleaning up, the master and servant pair finally didn't look as pitiful as before. Chu Luyue checked her pulse and confirmed that most of her wounds were superficial and that there were no internal problems. Only then did he finally relax. Moreover, although Mu Hongyu seemed to have lost a lot of weight, there seemed to be an extremely strong and vigorous energy in her body. This was probably the reason why she broke through to the peak of the 5th step in such a short period of time. Chu Luyue originally wanted to ask her about her recent situation, but when he remembered that Jian Fengqi and Shui Lu were still waiting outside, he suppressed the question in his heart. After cleaning up, the two finally returned to the front hall. Jian Fengqi's gaze swept across Mu Hongyu's body and raised his eyebrows slightly. Shui Lu's eyes flashed with amazement. So Mu Hongyu was born so beautiful. After washing away the bloodstains on her body and grooming herself, her appearance had completely changed. Bright, flamboyant, lively, and a pair of almond-shaped eyes very bright. This was a girl who was as passionate and pure as fire. Mu Hongyu walked in and looked around curiously. Lu Yu, your residence is so clean and beautiful. Although it wasn't big, it was clean and elegant, giving people a very comfortable feeling. Chu Luyue teased. Someone help me clean up this place. I'll introduce you later. Have a seat first. Mu Hongyu casually found a seat and sat down. Finally, she could not hold back her curiosity and asked, Lu Yu, didn't you just come here not long ago? How come you already have your own place? This was the capital of the Tianling dynasty, the West Hill. Ordinary people might not have the opportunity to come here in their lifetime, but Lu Yu had managed to gain a foothold here in such a short time. Could it be that Vice Admiral Mu helped you find a courtyard? Chu Liyue's lips curved up slightly. Vice Admiral Mu has helped me a lot, but this house has nothing to do with Vice Admiral Mu. He had asked me to stay in his Mu residence, but I felt that it was too much of a bother, so I came out to look for another place to stay. I am now a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion. My master used to live in this house, but now he has given it to me. Mu Hongyu sighed. Then your master must be a very good person. Chu Liyue smile deepened as she nodded. No matter if it was in the past or now, Yuchi Song had treated her well. Actually, it was thanks to young Master Jian that I was able to settle down in West Hill. As Chu Luyue spoke, she glanced at Jian Fengqi with a faint smile. If it wasn't for him, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even have the qualifications to walk into Yuxiang Hall today. Food, drink, housing, and transportation, which doesn't cost money. Jian Fengqi's face instantly darkened. She actually dared to mention it. Mu Hongyu did not understand and only looked at Jian Fengqi with some surprise. She did not expect Jian Fengqi to be so loyal. Sensing Mu Hongyu's sincerity, Jian Fengqi forcibly swallowed his words. Anyway, the money had already been robbed by Chu Luyue. It was useless to say anything now. He might as well admit it and gain a good reputation. Thus, he opened the bone fan in his hand with a swish and smiled in a carefree and unrestrained manner. It's nothing. Chu Luyue agreed. Yes. Young Master Jian has always been generous to his friends. Otherwise, he would not have spent so much money to redeem you today. Hongyu, you really have to give him a good rest this time. Mu Hongyu nodded seriously. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked curiously. Oh right, that white crystal coin. How much is it? She had never even left country Yaochen before, so she naturally did not know about it. Chu Luyue smiled. One white crystal coin is worth 10,000 taels of gold. Mu Hongyu exclaimed and jumped up from her chair. What? Then young Master Jian just spent 6,600,000. How much money is that? She widened her almond-shaped eyes and looked at Jian Fengqi. Her face, which had just regained some color, turned pale again. Previously, she was still thinking that she could not let them help her for free. She would definitely return the money to them when she had the money. But this astronomical figure, even if I were to be sold, I would not be worth so much money. Mu Hongyu stammered. Chu Luyue waved at her and asked her to sit down. Silly child, this is the price you sold for just now. Mu Hongyu's expression froze. Ah, it seems like this is really the case. Then what should I do? Chu Luyue patted her hand comfortingly. Hongyu, young Master Jian helped you out of friendship. Why would he want you to return the money? Then, what kind of heartless and unjust person would he be? Young Master Jian, don't you think so? Chu Luyue asked with a smile. Jian Fengqi's eyebrows twitched violently. He knew that Chu Luyue would not let him off so easily. Although he did not intend to let Mu Hongyu return the money, she wanted to make him lose his 6,600,000. Yet, he could not say anything. Of course. I can still afford this amount of money, Jian Fengqi gritted his teeth and said. Mu Hongyu was slightly relieved when she heard this, but she still felt very apologetic. But this amount of money is a lot to me. This time, I owe you guys too much. Hongyu, you are too polite. We are all friends and should help each other. Even if young Master Jian was not here today, I would still bring you out. Mu Hongyu's eyes were filled with tears. Lu Yu, you are so nice. Jian Fengqi was confused. Wasn't I the one who paid the money? Why is she thanking Chu Luyue now? Shui Lu are watched from the side with great interest. TSK. Chu Luyue is really powerful. He can actually subdue Jian Fengqi, this monster. The young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain, who usually does whatever he wants in Xiling City, has finally met his natural enemy. She had not seen Jian Fengqi so aggrieved in a long time. Jian Fengqi seemed to have sensed her gaze and coldly glanced at her. Shui Lu did not say a word and smiled gently. Why are you looking at me? If you have the ability, go and fight with Chu Luyue. Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze in resignation. He knew that none of them could be relied on. He did not know why, but whenever he faced Chu Luyue, he always seemed to be at a disadvantage. This feeling of not being able to use his fists and legs was really similar. Hongyu, we have been talking about us. Let's talk about you now. Chu Luyue looked at Mu Hongyu. Why did you suddenly come to Xiling? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 592. Mu Hongyu sighed. We have to start from half a month ago. It turned out that after Chu Luyue left the Imperial City, Mu Hongyu also applied for leave from the academy and planned to go home with her mother. Ever since she went to the Imperial City to study, she had never returned. This time, her mother's body had recovered, so she wanted to reunite with her family. However, she didn't expect them to be ambushed on the way. It turned out that Elder Wushan betrayed them and lured people to assassinate them. In a moment of desperation, Mu Hongyu acted as bait and lured those people away so that Elder Ji Chang could escape with her mother. Besides, as her mother kept objecting, Mu Hongyu personally knocked her out with a knife. Mu Hongyu originally thought that she was dead for sure, but she fell from the cliff when she was on the brink of death and fell into the rushing river below. She was severely injured back then, and she floated in the river for 3 days and 3 nights. If it weren't for the golden mane bear cub, she might have died in the river. After enduring those 3 days and a days, she finally saw a boat downstream. There were more than 20 people on the boat, and almost all of them were strong. She vaguely felt that something was amiss back then, but she was on the brink of death back then. She finally saw a chance to live, so how could she care so much? Hence, she begged with all her might and used all her money in exchange for a chance to board the boat. She thought that as long as she could go ashore, she would definitely have a way to go back. However, she didn't expect that when the boat stopped again, it actually reached the border of Heaven's Canopy. When Emperor Jiawen previously summoned Heaven's Canopy, Mu Hongyu had seen it from afar. Hence, when she saw the gigantic Heaven's Canopy in the sky, she finally realized that there was something wrong with the boat she was on. When the group of people was about to come down from the boat, they were accidentally discovered and chased after. In the midst of the chaotic battle, Mu Hongyu ran for her life, but she couldn't take it anymore and fainted. When she woke up again, she realized that she was alone in Heaven's Canopy. She and the golden mane bear cub walked forward at a loss. When they were hungry, they ate grass. When they were tired, they just lay on the ground to rest. They had suffered all the hardships that they hadn't suffered in the past 10 years. After walking for 2 days, she met another group of people. And those were the people of Yuxiang Hole. They were originally passing by unintentionally and saw Mu Hongyu walking alone at the border of Heaven's Canopy, so they captured her. In fact, they didn't take Mu Hongyu seriously at first. It wasn't until they found out that Mu Hongyu could teleport from one place to another that they realized how unusual Mu Hongyu was. In the end, they brought her back to the West Hill. Mu Hongyu tried to escape 2 or 3 times, but she was quickly caught by them. In order to make her behave, they drugged her. When she woke up again, she was already in the iron cage. After Mu Hongyu finished speaking, the room fell into a long silence. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and rubbed his glabella. The people on the ship should be stowaways. There was such a special group of people outside Heaven's Canopy. They didn't have the strength of a stage 7 warrior and didn't know anyone in Heaven's Canopy, so they couldn't enter Heaven's Canopy through the proper channels. However, they were full of fantasies and yearning for Heaven's Canopy, so they racked their brains and used all kinds of methods to sneak into Heaven's Canopy. Heaven's Canopy was very wide. Even though many empires had sent countless soldiers to guard the borders, they couldn't guarantee that every place could completely guard against these stowaways. Mu Hongyu should have just happened to be in that group. Chu Luiyue went through all the experiences that she had just said in his mind. Finally, he couldn't help but sigh. It's a miracle that you're able to survive until here. The journey was full of difficulties and dangers. The slightest carelessness in any part of the journey could lead to complete death. However, Mu Hongyu was lucky enough to avoid all of them, and she just happened to meet them. It was almost as if the heavens were helping her. Jian Fengqi and Shui Lu also had complicated expressions. When they saw Mu Hongyu's injuries, they knew that she wasn't doing well during this period. However, what she said was still far beyond their expectations. Jian Fengqi slowly heaved a sigh of relief and muttered softly. In that case, the 6 million that I spent wasn't a loss. Shui Lu glared at him. Don't you know how to talk? Isn't he always gentle, considerate, and understanding when facing other girls? Why is it that when it comes to Mu Hongyu, he only knows how to say these things? Jian Fengqi also seemed to feel that something was wrong and coughed. Fortunately, Mu Hongyu didn't seem to mind. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, Then, your faint Yuan body. What's up with that? Mu Hongyu shrugged with an innocent face. I don't know either. It seems like it suddenly became like this. After those people from Yuxiang Hall captured me, I accidentally heard them say that they were going to sell me. I was scared and wanted to escape. In the end, I didn't know how, but I ended up in another place. They found me soon after, so I tried again when they weren't paying attention. I succeeded again. Only then did I know that there was something wrong with my body. Chu Liuyue's lips curled up slightly. What was wrong with her body? This was obviously a great opportunity. The faint Yuan body hadn't appeared in the world for thousands of years. It was no wonder that Yu Xiang Hall wanted to find her and even sent her to the Western Tomb. Mu Hongyu pondered for a while and said, "Oh, right. I floated in the river for 3 days. After I boarded the boat, my strength seemed to have slowly increased. When those people from Yu Xiang Hall found me, my strength finally stopped at the peak of the 5th step. It's probably related to the river. But those people on the boat weren't like me. Her physique came out of nowhere, so much so that she didn't even know how she managed to break through." Chu Liyue laughed. Now, when did Mu Hongyu become the faint Yuan body? There was no way to find out. But this wasn't important. What was important was that she had the faint Yuan body. This was something that countless people couldn't get even if they begged for it. Mu Hongyu actually did it out of nowhere. If word got out, who knew how many people would die of envy? Hongyu, since those things are already in the past, there's no need to think about it anymore. Now that you've come to the Western Tomb, you should stay here. Now that you have the faint Yuan body, your talent is amazing, and your future potential is limitless. Returning to Yaoqin will only delay you. Only by staying here will you have the chance to become a top powerhouse. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 593. Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. There was no cultivator in the world who didn't want to become stronger. Mu Hongyu was no exception. In the past, she didn't know what the faint Yuan body was. It was only when she was trapped in the iron cage and listened to Song Zheng and the people below for a long time that she gradually understood that she now had a rare physique. After hearing Chu Liuyue's words, she was also tempted. Can I really stay here? Tianling Dynasty, Xiling, the imperial capital, this was a place she didn't even dare to think about in the past. Chu Liyue said affirmatively, "Of course you can. Although you were a stowaway previously, now that young Master Jian has auctioned you off, you are nominally his person. Naturally, you can stay here legitimately." Jian Fengqi turned his wrist and gently pressed the bone fan against his brow bone. His eyes were slightly lowered, and his expression couldn't be seen. His person, these words sounded really. Mu Hongyu nodded thoughtfully. In that case, do I have to stay by his side in the future? Didn't those people say that I was a slave? Mu Hongyu said the last 2 words very hesitantly. She didn't know how she had become a slave for no reason. In the past, she was a princess in country Yaoqin. Who knew that in the blink of an eye, she would become, it would be hard for anyone to accept. Chu Liyue explained the law of the Tianling dynasty to her. Although you didn't do it on purpose, you are indeed a stowaway. Moreover, Yu Xiang Hall has publicly auctioned you off. This news will spread very quickly, and everyone will have the preconceived notion that you, with every word Chu Liyue said, Mu Hongyu's face darkened. Jian Fengqi suddenly said, "Actually, it's not that there's no way to get rid of your identity as a slave." Mu Hongyu's eyes lit up. Really? What is it? Jian Fengqi didn't immediately answer. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at him suspiciously. In the Tianling dynasty, even the master of a slave had no right to revoke the slave status. There were only 2 ways to get them out of this situation. The first way was to make a great contribution and be pardoned by the emperor. However, this kind of situation was very rare. The Tianling dynasty had achieved this in the past 1,000 years, and it was no more than one hand. The second was marriage. When a master and a slave established a karmic relationship, the slave's identity would naturally be revoked. This was also the way most slaves changed their identities. This method was actually not that simple, because in the Tianling dynasty, the status of a slave was very lowly. If they married a slave, they would often be ridiculed and despised. The average master would not be willing to endure this for a slave, unless the slave was extremely powerful. After all, this was a world where strength reigned supreme. However, in comparison, this method was much simpler than the first method. Mu Hongyu definitely couldn't do the first one now. Jian Fengqi's suggestion was most likely the second one. Shui Lu seemed to have realized something as well. She suddenly looked at Jian Fengqi, and a hint of surprise flashed in her eyes. What's Jian Fengqi thinking? He's Mu Hongyu's master now. Is he planning to disregard his status as the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain and marry Mu Hongyu? Shui Lu liked Mu Hongyu very much, but she had a deeper relationship with Jian Fengqi after all. If Jian Fengqi really did this, even if his parents agreed, the entire Dragon Teeth Mountain would not. How can the young master's wife have such a background? Although Jian Fengqi's mother came from an ordinary background, she wasn't a slave. The few people in the room fell into a strange silence. Mu Hongyu looked at one person, then the other, and was confused. What's going on? Weren't we having a good chat just now? She said with some apprehension. If this will make things difficult for you, then I won't do it. I'll think of another way myself. You've already helped me a lot, I can't trouble you anymore. Chu Luiyue glanced at Jian Fengqi meaningfully. He didn't mean what he said just now, did he? Jian Fengqi felt a little guilty under her stare, so he turned his gaze away. In fact, he was also shocked when he said that. However, when he heard Mu Hongyu say that, he felt an inexplicable discomfort in his heart. Hongyu, this matter can't be solved in a short period of time. However, as long as you cultivate well and become a powerhouse, these problems will be solved easily. Chu Luiyue said seriously. Mu Hongyu looked at her determined expression, and her gaze was firm and powerful. The uneasiness in her heart gradually dissipated. Chu Luiyue always seemed to have a power that could make people feel at ease. It was as if as long as she was around, nothing would be a problem. Mu Hongyu's almond-shaped eyes curved as she nodded vigorously. Okay. I'll listen to you. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and asked. Now you have two choices. One is to join the Chongshu Pavilion with me. The other is to follow young Master Jian to Dragon Teeth Mountain. With your current aptitude, you can choose any of the sects in West Hill. Mu Hongyu said without hesitation. I'll go to Chongshu Pavilion with you. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows high and finally couldn't help but knock on the table. Excuse me, have you forgotten that there's another person here? Mu Hongyu, you're redeemed by me. Naturally, you should go to Dragon Teeth Mountain. What's going on with you following Chu Luiyue to Chongshu Pavilion? Mu Hongyu's eyes flashed with confusion and surprise. But I've always been with Luiyue in the past. It was the same when they were in the academy. Now that she had the chance, she naturally wanted to do the same. Following Jian Fengqi. She didn't even think about it. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up as she said lazily, Young Master Jian, didn't you ask me to give you the money? I'll give it to you. From now on, Hongyu will follow me. I'll naturally take good care of her. Jian Fengqi blurted out, I don't agree. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 594. You were the one who suggested it just now. Why are you disagreeing now? Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows and asked. Jian Fengqi choked. I was just saying it casually, Oh, I think so too. Why would young Master Jian be so calculative with us over money, right? Chu Luiyue said with a smile. Jian Fengqi almost vomited blood. Chu Luiyue was going to snatch her away without spending a single cent. Shui Lu could not stand it anymore and spoke up for Jian Fengqi. Quite a few people have seen Snapper at the auction. Also, when we brought Snapper out, we were seen by a few people. Now, the news that young Master Jian bought Hongyu should have spread throughout West Hill. If Hongyu joined the Chongshu Pavilion, people would think too much. Jian Fengqi heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Luiyue looked at Mu Hongyu. Hongyu, little Lu, what I said makes sense. What do you think? Mu Hongyu was very conflicted. After hearing so much from them, she roughly understood the different effects of these two choices. Of course, she wanted to choose Chu Luiyue. But if this would bring her trouble, it would not be good. Shui Lu smiled and said gently, also, Miss Chu, you might not like what I'm going to say next, but I still have to say it. On the surface, the Chongshu Pavilion is still one of the top 4 sects in West Hill, but everyone knows the actual situation. You and Chang Wanzhou have your reasons for choosing to join the Chongshu Pavilion. But for Mu Hongyu, it might not be the best choice. Chu Luiyue was not angry. Instead, she nodded as if she agreed with what Shui Lu said. Shui Lu relaxed a little and continued, Mu Hongyu now has the faint yuan body, which is a top-notch cultivation physique, 1 in a million. Compared to others, her cultivation is much stronger. However, the more this is the case, the more you need the guidance of a great teacher. You also need an excellent environment. Dragon Teeth Mountain is the most suitable. No matter how one looked at it, the current Dragon Teeth Mountain was completely superior to the Chongshu Pavilion. Mu Hongyu's aptitude will definitely attract the attention of many people. Although she had already left Yuxiang Hall, there might still be people who would continue to make a move on her in the future. However, if he entered Dragon Teeth Mountain, it would undoubtedly be much safer. At the very least, it will give those people another layer of concern. Shui Lu spoke with a gentle tone and spoke tirelessly, and she clearly analyzed the pros and cons of it. After hearing this, Mu Hongyu lowered her head and pondered for a long time. Then she looked at Chu Luiyue. Lu Yu, I plan to go to Dragon Teeth Mountain. As long as I become an expert, I will no longer be a burden to you. Instead, I will be able to help you. Chu Luiyue felt warmth in his heart. Since you've already made up your mind, just do it. Mu Hongyu nodded seriously, and then a trace of worry appeared on her face. Of course it's good for me to stay here, but what about Yao Qin? My father and mother don't know where I am now, and they don't know my situation. They must be worried sick. Chu Luiyue asked, don't you have a way to contact them? Mu Hongyu's expression was gloomy. I did, but I've already lost everything I had on me when I fled all the way here. Chu Luiyue thought about it and agreed. I'll help you pass the message back. Mu Hongyu was relieved. The few of them chatted for a while. Chu Luiyue briefly recounted his experiences during this period of time, and then told Mu Hongyu many things about West Hill, telling her to be more careful to avoid trouble. In the end, Mu Hongyu reluctantly left with Jian Fengqi and Shui Lu. Fortunately, Jian Fengqi's medical skills were very good, so Chu Luiyue was not worried about Mu Hongyu's injuries. As long as Dragon Teeth Mountain could protect her, nothing else mattered. After sending them off, Chu Luiyue sat down and began to write a letter. Ordinary people could not enter and exit Heaven's canopy at will, so if one wanted to communicate, the safest and most convenient way was to hire someone to deliver the letter. However, the cost was relatively high, and ordinary people could not afford it. However, this was not a problem for Chu Luiyue. After writing, she went out to deliver the letter. This letter was for Qi Han, who was still in Yaoqin. Credibility was the most important thing in this kind of thing, so Chu Luiyue was not worried that someone would open her letter halfway. Besides, even if it was opened, no one other than the 13U guard would be able to understand it. After doing this, Chu Luiyue returned to the Chongshu pavilion. When she met Yi Ranran at the mountain pass, before Chu Luiyue could say anything, Yi Ranran asked, "Luyu, why are you only back now?" Chu Luiyue saw that her expression was not right, so she asked, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What happened?" Yi Ranran walked to her side, his small round face full of worry. When Pavilion Master came back just now, his expression was a little strange. Then, he went to the back of the mountain alone and stayed there for a long time. You might not know, but Pavilion Master's son is buried there. Actually, Pavilion Master rarely goes there. I don't know what happened today. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Yuchi Song must have seen something in the zither room today and realized that her death back then was related to Jiang Yuqing. That was why he had such a reaction. However, she could not reveal her identity now, so it was difficult for her to persuade him. At this point, it was useless to persuade him. She could only wait for him to calm down. Master said that you went out with Pavilion Master today. Do you know what's going on? Yi Ranran asked again. Pavilion Master had become much more energetic the day before because of the matter with the herb garden. In the end, it had only been a short while, but he suddenly became like this. They couldn't help but worry. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. I'm not too sure either. It's just that, after accompanying Master to Axianli Garden today, I think he became like this. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 595. Xinli Garden. At this moment, Elder Shai walked over. He frowned when he heard Chu Luiyue's words. Pavilion Master, didn't you say you were going to the zither room in Thousand View Garden to retrieve something? Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Eldest young Master Jiang went in with Master at that time. I was waiting outside, so I didn't know what happened inside. Master was fine when he came out, but not long after he left Xinli Garden, he said he wanted to be alone. That's why I didn't come back with him. Elder Shai was puzzled. Could it be that he was hurt by what he saw? But it doesn't seem like it. The zither room used to be the Crown Princess' favorite place, so there were many traces of her there. Since the Pavilion Master was going to retrieve his things, he must have been mentally prepared. When the Pavilion Master came back today, Elder Shai had only taken a quick glance at him and felt that something was wrong. He wanted to chase after him to ask, but the Pavilion Master went to the back of the mountain, so he didn't follow him. Forget it. Don't worry about that for now. Cultivate well during this period. The date of this year's Great Sect competition has been decided. It'll be held in a month, so you must prepare well. Elder Shai said. Yi Ranran was surprised. It's always been held in February. Why is it so early this year? Elder Shai smiled bitterly. The time was decided by the major sections. Yi Ranran understood immediately and kept quiet in embarrassment. Chu Luiyue thought to himself, I knew it. Every year, West Hill would hold a great sect competition to measure each sect's strength and determine their status. The date of the competition was basically the same every year. Since it was held so early this year, it was obvious that someone was unwilling to wait any longer. The Nine-Star Alliance was not the only sect that wanted to replace Chongshu Pavilion. Elder Shai said comfortingly. It doesn't matter if it's sooner or later. Ranran, inform the disciples of the Pavilion Master and tell them to prepare to do their best. Yes. With that, Elder Shai left. Chu Luiyue and Yi Ranran didn't say anything else and went their separate ways. When Chu Luiyue walked to the door of his room, he happened to see Chang Wanzhou coming out of his room. His aura seemed to be stronger than before. Chu Luiyue asked in surprise. "You used another medicinal pill?" Chang Wanzhou nodded. After a while, he explained. "You said that we can continue to use the pill after the efficacy of the previous one is depleted." Chu Luiyue walked over and took his wrist to check his pulse. He was even more shocked. The cold evil energy in Chang Wanzhou's body dissipated faster than he had expected, and a portion of his frozen origin power was released. She knew that Chang Wanzhou's strength would gradually increase as the process progressed, but she didn't expect it to be so fast. In truth, only a small part of the frozen origin power had been dissolved. However, the power contained within it was extremely great. No wonder he used medicinal pills again. At this rate, his body would be fully recovered in about 3 months. Chu Luiyue looked at him strangely. Chang Wanzhou's thin lips moved, and a trace of doubt appeared on his beautiful face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm just thinking that raising a child is really expensive," Chu Luiyue teased with a smile. Chang Wanzhou pursed his lips. "I'm not a child." Chu Luiyue didn't argue with him. Children always liked to say that they were adults. However, it was fortunate that she had money now. Otherwise, just helping Chang Wanzhou recuperate his body would make her bankrupt. She rubbed his head, waved her hand, and went back into the room. "Cultivate well. I'll give you a gift later." Chang Wanzhou stared at her back for a long time, and a question slowly emerged in his heart. Was he really a spendthrift? If she was going to give him a gift, then he should give her a gift in return. His eyes moved slightly as he thought of something, and he turned around and went back to his room. After closing the door and windows, Chu Luiyue took out the cloud sky copper sword and placed it in front of her to examine it carefully. Standing close to it, she could feel the texture of the sword. Even if it was just placed there quietly, she could still feel the faint sharpness of its aura. The sword was bronze in color, and only the tip of the sword was faintly peacock blue. "Qiaoling bronze core," Chu Luiyue muttered softly. According to Taizu, after this thing was polished, it could become the top sword in the world. Taizu's judgment was naturally not wrong, but the key was, how was she going to polish it? Although she was a triple cultivator, she had never personally refined a weapon. After thinking for a moment, she finally asked Taizu for advice. "Taizu, may I ask what should we do with this Qiaoling bronze core?" Taizu's voice sounded very relaxed. "Ha! That's simple. We just need to find a star stone and grind out the core of this Qiaoling bronze core. Then, we'll activate Tianlei to forge it." Chu Luiyue. "What did you say?" She understood the first half of the sentence, but did she hear the second half wrong? Activating Tianlei, that was something that only a top expert could do. Even if her current strength wasn't weak, wanting to trigger the heavenly lightning was a fool's dream. Ahem. Actually, this matter is not that difficult. You should know that ordinary flames have no effect on the core of this Qiaoling bronze core. Only the power of Tianlei can forge it. The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. "I don't know." She had never even seen Qiaoling bronze before. How could she know this? Taizu seemed to have finally realized something and changed the topic. "Oh, I see. Actually, it doesn't matter if you don't know." Chu Luiyue was expressionless. "So you have other ways?" "No. Ahem, actually, I can help you activate Tianlei." Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. "Really?" Taizu paused and suddenly sounded guilty. As long as you can withstand the power of Tianlei," Chu Luiyue suddenly had an ominous premonition. "What do you mean?" "Well, although I can help you activate Tianlei, the core of the Qiaoling bronze core has a natural defense against the power of Tianlei. If you want to forge it into a good sword, you have to let Tianlei's power completely pass through it. The best way is to use the forger's body as a bridge to receive the power of Tianlei and then transfer it to the core. Chu Luiyue put down the cloud sky copper sword with a soft sound. Taizu's voice stopped abruptly. The atmosphere was very awkward. Chu Luiyue did not move her eyebrows. Are you trying to forge a sword, or are you trying to forge me? Ahem. Girl, you can't say that. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to do it. But you are different. Now, you are the owner of the Long Yuan sword. There are a total of 81 Tianlei's power on the Long Yuan sword. Your body also has a certain tolerance for Tianlei's power. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief. Then, as long as I withstand one Tianlei, I can succeed. Taizu suddenly paused. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Great Ancestor's voice came from nowhere. At least 9. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 596. At least 9 of them. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched violently. She almost suspected that she had misheard. She asked seriously, "Are you serious?" Taizu fell into a brief silence again. To trigger Tianlei to forge Yuan tools, it's all like this. But don't worry, with your strength, 9 of Tianlei won't be a problem. Chu Luiyue's heart did not waver. Taizu continued, "Actually, this is also very beneficial for you. If you can successfully withstand the power of Tianlei, it will definitely make your foundation more stable, and your physical strength will greatly increase." Tianlei body tempering was naturally extraordinary. Chu Luiyue thought for a long time before finally spitting out a word. Okay. Since Taizu mentioned it, he must be sure that she could do it. Since that was the case, she might as well give it a try. Taizu was clearly very happy as well. Back then, he had triggered Tianlei to forge the Dragon Abyss sword. If Chu Luiyue could succeed, from a certain perspective, she could be considered to have inherited his legacy. There's a star stone that I used in the past in the Dragon Abyss sword. You can use it directly. It's best if you can find a quiet and secluded mountain peak to avoid affecting others when you trigger Tianlei. Taizu advised seriously. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment. There were actually a few small peaks around Qinyuan Mountain, but not many people went there. In addition, after the crisis at the Chongshu Pavilion, those peaks had been damaged to varying degrees. Now, they were even more deserted. It was the most suitable place to choose. There's no time like the present. It's easier to trigger the power of heaven and earth at night. How about we go today? It was night. Chu Luiyue went to Yanlin Peak, which was beside Qinyuan Mountain, alone. Although more than a year had passed, it was not difficult to see that there had been an intense battle on the peak. Countless trees on the peak were broken and collapsed. Chu Luiyue went all the way to the peak. The peak here had been shaved off, and it was smooth and neat. It was convenient for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue looked around. After confirming that there was no problem here, she stood in the middle. Then, she searched the Dragon Abyss sword for a moment. With a thought, a huge star stone appeared in front of him, accompanied by a muffled sound. This star stone was as tall as a person. It was square in shape, and its surface was dark blue in color. Only after looking at it closely could one see the specks of light on its surface. It was as bright and moving as the night sky. There were also countless sword marks. One could imagine what this star stone had been through. A faint pressure could be felt from above. These starlight rays are actually the power of the heavenly lightning that has been left on the surface. After so many years, I thought it would be covered in dust forever. I didn't expect it to see the light of day again. The great ancestor sighed. Chu Luiyue exclaimed in her heart. Now, what you need to do is to polish the cloud sky copper sword on it until the heart appears. Taizu's voice was much deeper and more solemn. This process will consume a lot of strength and spirit. You have to be prepared. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Then, she leaped onto the star stone. She waved her wrist, and the cloud sky copper sword appeared in her hand. She glanced up at him. Night had fallen. Dazzling starlight gradually flashed in the black sky. Gradually, it gathered into a river of stars that flowed slowly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath. She held the sword hilt with one hand and pressed the sword body with the other. She placed it on the star stone and started polishing it. Swish! At the same time, in the Jiang residence. In the study, Jiang Yuqing put down the brush in his hand and looked at Jiang Yuji, who was standing in front of him. You came here just to tell me this. After Jiang Yuji returned home today, she shouted that she wanted to see him. However, he was troubled by the Yuchi song today, so he asked her to wait outside. After dealing with the matter and calming down, he called her in. He originally thought that it was because of some urgent matter that made her wait so long to see him. He didn't expect. It was actually because of Chu Luiyue. Jiang Yuji's face was still filled with indignation. Brother! That Chu Luiyue is too much of a bully. You have to help me get justice. Jiang Yuqing leaned back in his chair and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He knew his sister's personality best. Usually, he always doted on her and tried his best to go along with her. However, he didn't expect her to become even worse. Just for a sword, she was actually so unforgiving. Yuji, let's not talk about how you can't be sure that person is her. Even if it's really her, you have no reason to find trouble with her. No matter if it was the previous time or this time, the other party took the money and didn't forcefully snatch it from you. Jiang Yuji said angrily. It must be her. In the entire Xiling, other than her, who else would take the initiative to go against me? Tingan said that the sword isn't even worth 10,000 white crystals, but she insisted on fighting with me. Isn't she doing this on purpose? Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to think much of it. Jiang Yuji couldn't tell, but he could see through Xiahou Tingan's thoughts. He just wanted to use this chance to get into Jiang Yuji's good books. However, he didn't expect someone to interfere and snatch his chance to curry favor with her. It even made Jiang Yuji angry. After all, he was the Xiahou family's young master and still relied on his family to support him. He didn't have so much spare money. In the end, he pushed all the blame to Chu Luiyue. He really didn't like Xiahou Tingan's actions and couldn't help but despise him. Do you listen to whatever Xiahou Tingan says? Yuji, you have to remember that he's trying to climb up the social ladder by chasing you. You can't be led by the nose by him. But how could Jiang Yuji listen to this now? All she thought about was the humiliation she suffered these 2 times. That's because he's right. Chu Luiyue is clearly going against me. Brother, you have to help me teach her a lesson. Jiang Yuqing was a little impatient. She's already entered the Chongshu Pavilion and become Yuqi Song's personal disciple. She's also famous in Xiling City. If you touch her now, you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. This matter isn't as simple as you think. Jiang Yuji widened her eyes. Brother, you're the 3rd princess's son-in-law now. Will anyone dare to say anything bad about you if you want to do anything? You're just teaching Chu Luiyue a lesson. What's there to worry about? Jiang Yuqing's gaze turned cold, and he looked at her with a knife-like gaze. Who taught you all this? Jiang Yuji shuddered and then remembered what Xiahou Tingan said previously. Now that brother is in a high position, it's time for me to be very careful. She shrunk her neck and immediately softened her tone. No one taught me. Brother, I'm your biological sister, and I'm not stupid. I know what I should say and do. I didn't mean it just now. Don't take it to heart. Jiang Yuqing's expression softened, but his voice was still very cold. Go back first. I'll treat it as if you didn't mention this. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 597. Jiang Yuji was shocked. She didn't expect that she would be rejected when she specially asked her brother to help her stand up for her. He had never been like this in the past. Brother. She quickly stepped forward and placed her hands on the table, looking at Jiang Yuqing in disbelief. I was bullied like this, and you're going to let it go just like that? She's targeting me because she doesn't care about you, brother. Brother has always been domineering when it comes to these things. Why is he suddenly acting out of character today? Jiang Yuqing looked up at her. This is a special period. Try not to cause trouble. I know you've been wronged in this matter. Go back to the warehouse and pick a few things you like. This isn't about money. Jiang Yuqing refused to let it go. By the way, didn't they say that Chu Liuyua's backer is Mu Qinghe? Brother, you just have to call Mu Qinghe over and let him teach Chu Liuyua a lesson, right? This way, not only could Chu Liuyua suffer, but she could also clarify her relationship with Mu Qinghe and let the entire West Hill know that she didn't have any backing at all. Jiang Yuqing ignored her and lowered his head to deal with his own matters. He had spoiled her too much. If he didn't teach her a good lesson, who knew what kind of trouble she would cause in the future? In the past, it didn't matter if she caused trouble, but how could she do it now? Once he and Sheng Wanwan got married and Shanghai Wan ascended to the throne, he absolutely couldn't let anything happen to him. Moreover, he had been in a very bad mood recently. His Majesty had been unconscious and showed no signs of waking up. The Mest Yuan gravel on Qing Yuan Mountain had been removed, and Yu Chi Song was suspicious of him. He had to think of a way to cover it up. As for Sheng Wanwan, she also became more and more unpredictable. These things had caused him to be in a terrible state. How could he still have the mood to help Jiang Yuji do these things? Big brother, are you really not going to help me? Jiang Yuji took a step back, her eyes filled with anger and grievance. Is it because of her face? Jiang Yuqing paused. He slowly raised his head and said expressionlessly, "What did you say?" His tone sounded calm, but his eyes were filled with anger. Unfortunately, Jiang Yuji was completely focused on herself at this moment, so how could she care about these things? I knew it. It was because of her face. Those eyes are really similar to the Empress. Pa! Jiang Yuqing suddenly slammed the table. Jiang Yuji was startled and her whole body trembled. Seeing that Jiang Yuqing's face was as cold as ice, she finally realized that she had said something wrong. Her eyes quickly turned red, and tears fell from her eyes as she felt wronged. Brother, you're actually throwing a tantrum at me because of a Chu Luyue. All these years, Big Brother had never been like this. Or is it for the princess? Jiang Yuqing suddenly said in a cold voice, "Get out." Jiang Yuji's heart trembled, and she seemed to have thrown caution to the wind as she sneered. Everyone thinks that you have a deep relationship with the third princess, but if that's really the case, why did you secretly draw the princess's portrait? Do you think I don't know, Pa? A crisp slap sounded. Jiang Yuqing looked at her coldly. I think you've been spoiled too much. During this period of time, stay in the residence and don't go anywhere. Jiang Yuji's head tilted to the side from the slap, and she couldn't react in time. Jiang Yuqing had already left. Also, put your marriage with Xiahou Tingan on hold for now. Then, he directly walked out of the study. Very quickly, someone walked in from outside and wanted to invite her out. Jiang Yuji's chest tightened, and her vision turned black as she fainted. Thousands of miles away. Yan Qing rushed back, but she was still a step too late. The people from Peerless Palace had all been killed, and Rong Xiao had already brought the troops back. Yan Qing felt regretful that she couldn't laugh at Yu Mo. But after seeing Yu Mo's swollen face, she felt more comforted. Where's His Highness? He still had Ms. Lu Yu's letter, so he naturally had to present it as soon as possible. However, Rong Xiao wasn't around. Yu Mo's face was swollen as he raised his chin and softly said, Peerless Palace was destroyed. The annihilation of the Peerless Palace has shaken all the divisions. Many have begun to impeach His Highness. Now, all the elders are here and waiting in the main hall. His Highness just left. Yan Qing was shocked. All the elders are here. Why are they so fast? Umo snorted. Someone has long disliked His Highness. Now that they finally have a chance, why would they let it go? Yan Qing nodded with a serious expression. This day was bound to come. Since His Highness has already taken action, he naturally made preparations. This time, we should be able to clean up quite a lot of dirty things. Tai Yuan Hall. All the elders were seated on both sides. The atmosphere in the hall was cold. His Highness Saint suddenly destroyed Peerless Palace this time. He's too stubborn. Why did he do this all of a sudden? Even if Peerless Palace did something wrong, he shouldn't be so cruel. All the tribes are talking about it now. They are all waiting for His Highness to give an explanation. Although His Highness the Chosen One has a strong fist, his actions are a little too much. A voice suddenly sounded, breaking the suffocating atmosphere. His Highness Saint has arrived. When the voice sounded, everyone immediately looked up at the entrance of the hall. A tall and slender figure, draped in a black cloak, exuding a cold and tough aura, walked in. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 598. His body was clean, but his whole body was filled with a strong smell of blood. He had the appearance of a banished immortal, but he looked more like a killing god from hell. He strode over, and his footsteps fell heavily on the hearts of the crowd. Thud. 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 He finally stood in the middle of the hall. The entire hall fell silent for a moment, and everyone was stunned by the man's aura. He was so young, but he did not lose in front of so many revered elders. Many people's hearts were pounding. Although the Holy Sun was young, he was already standing at the peak. His aura was very different from before. A few years ago, when he had just ascended to the position of Holy Sun, he was still young and inexperienced. But unknowingly, even they began to feel a little afraid. This was the confidence that came from having great power and power. None of the people who had been prepared to question him opened their mouths at this moment. Rong Xiao was the first to break the silence. All of you revered elders are of noble status, and you usually live in seclusion. Why are all of you here today? Everyone came to their senses and looked at each other. That's right. They were here today to find trouble with Rong Xiao. How could they be scared the moment they saw him? An elder who was sitting closer to the seat of honor stroked his beard and spoke in a deep voice, Your Highness Holy Son, I heard that you just annihilated the entire Peerless Palace. Rong Xiao nodded indifferently and said casually, That's right. He admitted it so calmly that the crowd did not know how to respond. Wasn't he too self-righteous? Even if he was the Holy Son, it was too much for him to be so presumptuous. The elder's face turned cold, and his voice was even colder. Your Highness, the Peerless Palace is one of the 28 divisions, and they have never made any big mistakes. Your actions have disappointed the people of the other divisions. You are too careless. As soon as he opened his mouth, many people immediately agreed with him. That's right. Your Highness attacked them for no reason. How do you explain it to the other divisions? You've been away for a long time. Now that you've returned, you've killed everyone from the unparalleled palace. Not a single one of them was spared. It's inevitable that you'll be criticized, now that the impeachment of the various departments is flying in like snowflakes. If you still don't appear and give an explanation, I'm afraid it will be difficult to convince the public. A commotion broke out in the hall in an instant. On the surface, it looked like they were doing it for the sake of Rong Xiu's reputation and the safety of the troops. However, every word and sentence was criticizing Rong Xiu for being too impulsive and too cruel. Rong Xiu stood there quietly, as if he was listening, but also as if he wasn't. In short, there was no change in his expression from beginning to end. His reaction naturally caused many people to be dissatisfied. Your Highness. His Highness the Holy Sun. Are you still listening? Now that this matter has gotten out of hand, are you not going to resolve it? The old man who spoke first asked with a stern expression. Hearing this, Rong Xiu's thin red lips curled into a smile, but it was extremely cold. As the Holy Sun, I am in charge of the 28 departments. However, the impeachment of the various departments is now in the hands of Elder Tong Chuan. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Elder Tong Chuan's expression suddenly froze. He was so focused on using this opportunity to teach Rong Xiu a lesson that he forgot that he was the one who accepted the impeachment of the Holy Sun. He paused for a moment, then reluctantly said, "Previously, Your Highness, the Holy Sun, was not here. That's why the impeachment came to this old man," Rong Xiu said indifferently. "I have been back for more than half a month. Other than the day when I led the troops to kill the unparalleled palace, I've been here the rest of the time. However, from beginning to end, I didn't see Elder Tong Chuan send the impeachment back. I almost thought that you were going to take full control of the situation." Elder Tong Chuan's expression became even uglier. If these words were to spread, it would affect his reputation greatly. His aggressive aura finally subsided a lot. "Your Highness, you've misunderstood. Originally, this old man wanted to wait for you to come back this time and hand these impediments to you. However, because of the unparalleled palace, this old man didn't have time to take care of them." Rong Xiu smiled slightly. "I deeply agree. Elder Tong Chuan is a person of virtue and prestige. He would never do such a thing. I'll have to trouble Elder Tong Chuan to return all the impediments to I later." Elder Tong Chuan could only agree. The two of them went back and forth. Under the calm surface, there was a surging undercurrent. Everyone felt the biting cold murderous intent floating in the air, and all of them shut their mouths. Rong Xiu looked around and slowly said, "That's right. I naturally have my reasons for making a move on the unparalleled palace. When I was away, the unparalleled palace sent people to assassinate me. Such a crime is naturally unforgivable." Everyone looked at each other. Some were shocked, some were suspicious. Elder Tong Chuan hesitated for a moment and said, "Even if it was really someone from the unparalleled palace who tried to assassinate Your Highness, it would be enough to capture that person and kill him. If not, it would be enough to deal with everyone involved as a warning. Why did you have to kill them? Your Highness' actions are too. That person has no enmity with I. He must have been ordered by someone to do this. Zhang Yufang couldn't even handle such a small matter properly. Naturally, he should be punished. Moreover, the unparalleled palace has repeatedly offended me. I tolerated them time and time again. I thought they would admit their mistakes. I didn't expect them to raise a tiger and almost cause a disaster." Rong Xiu's gaze was as cold as a knife as it swept across everyone. The unparalleled palace's intention to rebel is clear. Since they have already done this, why should I be merciful? Moreover, to say that I is ruthless. He suddenly laughed with a disdainful expression. I have always been like this. So what? His tone was calm and indifferent, but it was so reasonable that it made everyone speechless. That's right. If Rongxiu was a merciful person, how could he be the Holy Sun? Honorable Tong Chuan opened his mouth but did not say anything. Rongxiu continued. I know that there are many people who don't agree with I don't care about the small matters on a daily basis. It's just that I don't care about it. But if there are really people who are interested in the position of I will be happy to fight with them. The unparalleled palace is a precedent. Everyone was shocked. Rongxiu was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Maybe it was because Rongxiu had repeatedly backed down a few years ago that they had forgotten what kind of person Rongxiu was. Until now, they were suddenly awakened. How could someone who could take the Holy Sun's position be a pushover? Did he mean that, from now on, he would have to adopt a tough attitude and methods? Many people recalled the bloody scene a few years ago and looked at Honorable Elder Tong Chuan anxiously. Honorable Elder Tong Chuan took a deep breath and said, Your Highness is right. But there are many people in the division. If you continue to use such an iron fist to deal with them, it will definitely cause them to resent you. Before he could finish, a burst of laughter came from outside the hall. Ha! This is a world where strength is respected. What's wrong with Your Highness doing this? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 599. This voice was low and deep, full of energy. It seemed to have come from far away, but it was like thunder, exploding in everyone's ears. Hearing this voice, respected Elder Tong Chuan's face changed. Many people in the hall had their expressions stiffened. Like a bolt of lightning, a figure broke through the void and arrived. In the blink of an eye, he appeared at the entrance of the hall. It was a slightly plump old man. His round face had a kind smile, and his eyes were curved into slits. He strode in, his footsteps light, and his landing was silent. However, when they saw this person enter, everyone in the hall became restless. Rongxiu looked back, his lips curling. 36 Respected Elder Ming, why are you here? I heard that Your Highness has finally cleaned up those bastards from the unparalleled palace. This old man is very happy, so I'm here to celebrate, 36 Respected Elder Ming said with a smile, not hiding the joy and excitement on his face. He had long found the unparalleled palace an eyesore. Rongxiu had held back for so long, and finally made his move. And it was a one-hit kill. He was very happy. Your Highness, I heard that you didn't bring many people this time, and you took care of all the people from the unparalleled palace in a day. It seems that Your Highness has improved a lot recently. Everyone was even more silent. Why was 36 Respected Elder Ming's focus always different from everyone else? However, he was very strong. Among all the respected elders, he was one of the most senior. Normal people could only lower their heads in front of him. When they faced Rongxiu, they might be able to use their status and seniority to put on airs. However, when facing 36 Respected Elder Ming, they definitely did not have the guts. Even respected Elder Tong Chuan tried his best to avoid provoking him. Rongxiu's smile deepened. Thank you for your praise, 36 Respected Elder Ming. During this period of time, I have indeed gained quite a lot, 36 Respected Elder Ming rubbed his chin and chuckled. That's right. He had even found a wife, what else was there to say? He turned his head to look at Elder Xian Tongchuan. His face was still smiling, but his words were not as polite. Tong Chuan, back then, our ancestors single-handedly swept through 28 tribes, and millions of people submitted to him. What they relied on was strength. Why are you so against it when it comes to His Highness the Holy Sun? The people of the Peerless Palace had repeatedly disobeyed their superiors. Now, they had even attempted to assassinate the Holy Sun. They should have been executed long ago. Only in this way would he be able to suppress the other people who had their own thoughts. In my opinion, your Highness's actions are not wrong at all. On the contrary, it is extremely good. Since he was the Holy Son, he should have the means and dignity of a Holy Son. In the past, Rongxiu had many misgivings, which was why he chose to give in time and time again. But now, what was there to give into? Respected Elder Tong Chuan opened his mouth and was about to say something when he was interrupted by 36 Respected Elder Ming. If you are dissatisfied with His Highness the Holy Son's actions, aren't you implying that our ancestor is cruel and cold-blooded? Elder Tong Chuan suddenly stood up. This old man didn't mean that. 36 Respected Elder Ming, don't randomly accuse me. Did this old man accuse you or did you accuse me? Everyone is very clear about it. What are you shouting for? 36 Respected Elder Ming said lazily. Respected Elder Tong Chuan's face flushed red. It was fine if this old thing didn't come out normally, but the moment he came out, he would cause a ruckus. Relying on his status to do whatever he wanted. And there was nothing he could do about it. 36 Respected Elder Ming's cold gaze swept across the crowd. The 28 tribes are all revered by the Holy Son. Since the Holy Son is cleaning up the sect, how could it be their turn to complain? And all of you have status. Instead of thinking about how to solve this problem, you came to question the Holy Son. Do you still have any rules? He looked amiable, but when he said those words, it was like a slap to everyone's face. Rongxiu said warmly. 36 Respected Elder Ming, all of you are also thinking for the sake of I and the 28 tribes. I think that this kind of thing will not happen. Isn't that right, everyone? After a short moment of silence, a respected elder finally stood up and bowed deeply to Rongxiu and 36 Respected Elder Ming. Your Highness, you don't have to explain for us. 36 Respected Elder Ming is right. We have indeed not considered this matter thoroughly. Please forgive us, Your Highness. Once someone took the lead, the rest of the people naturally followed suit. Very quickly, half of the people in the hall had expressed their attitudes and left one after another. The originally solemn and dignified battle array gradually became scattered and disorderly. Respected Elder Tong Chuan was so angry that his face turned pale, but he didn't dare to say anything. 36 Respected Elder Ming's status was higher than his, and he never acted according to common sense. He was extremely difficult to deal with. If he wasn't forced into a corner, he wouldn't have gone against him. His anger went back and forth between his chest and abdomen, making him feel very uncomfortable. In the end, seeing that this condemnation couldn't continue, he also stood up and planned to leave. Just as he was about to step out of the door, Rongxiu's voice came from behind him, neither too fast nor too slow. Respected Elder Tong Chuan, please don't forget to send those reports back. Also, since I have already returned, then we don't need to trouble Respected Elder Tong Chuan to review the reports of the 28 divisions anymore. Respected Elder Tong Chuan's back was facing Rongxiu, his face red and white. In the end, he could only stiffly agree and quickly leave. In the entire hall, only Rongxiu and 36 Respected Elder Ming were left. Today, this old man came at the right time, 36 Respected Elder Ming chuckled. Those little brats are also thanks to this old man's teachings. Their cooperation is also not bad, right? Rongxiu smiled. Thank you for coming out personally today. Some words were not suitable for him to say, but for 36 Respected Elder Ming to say it, it was twice the result with half the effort. At the very least, from today onwards, no one would dare to make an issue out of him being vicious and merciless. No matter how many people died in the unparalleled palace, no one would speak up for them. He had gained the upper hand this time, and many things would be much more convenient in the future. 36 Respected Elder Ming waved his hand indifferently. This old man has already come out of seclusion to help you for so long, this time won't make a difference. If you really want to thank me, why don't you bring your little princess back as soon as possible and let this old man take a look at her? Rong Xiu's sword-like eyebrows raised slightly. 36 Respected Elder Ming was really persistent about this matter. She still has very important things to do, so she probably won't be able to come during this period of time. Just as Rong Xiu finished speaking, he saw Yan Qing rushing in from outside. Your Highness. He had been waiting outside the entire time. When he saw that all the respected elders had come out, he thought that the matter here had already ended, so he immediately came over. Yan Qing presented a letter with both hands. Miss Lu Yu said that you must open it personally. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 600. 36 Respected Elder Ming's eyes lit up. It's a letter from your little princess. Open it and take a look. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly as he took the letter. His slender fingers brushed past the seal of the letter, but he suddenly paused. Rong Xiu looked up and glanced at 36 Respected Elder Ming. Do you plan to take a look at this letter too? Then, 36 Respected Elder Ming instinctively opened his mouth. Then, he noticed that it seemed inappropriate and quickly coughed. It's fine, it's fine. Since it's a letter for you, it's naturally inappropriate for me to read it. Take a look. As he spoke, he even took a step back. Rong Xiu then opened it. There was only a short line of words on the letter. Unfolding Xiang Yi Xan, the moon shines for thousands of miles. Signed, Yu. Rong Xiu held the letter and looked at that sentence. He kept it in his heart as his fingertips curled up slightly. Although it was only one sentence, it was enough for him. 36 Respected Elder Ming stood at the side and watched as Rong Xiu looked like a completely different person after he opened the letter. The murderous aura on his body dissipated completely. His eyebrows relaxed as if the ice and snow in early spring had melted. This Rong Xiu was indeed something that had never happened before. 36 Respected Elder Ming sighed in his heart and couldn't help but be even more curious. What kind of woman could make him fall in love with her so much? He wanted to take a look at the letter, but after thinking about it, he gave up. It was meaningless for an old man like him to read a love letter between a young couple. However, seeing that Rong Xiu was in such a good mood, he could make a request. That. Your Highness, the little princess has personally written a letter to you. Do you really not plan to visit her? It's better for young people to meet more. Rong Xiu read the letter twice before carefully keeping it. Then, he looked at 36 Respected Elder Ming and asked. Do you want to go together? 36 Respected Elder Ming was embarrassed for a moment after his thoughts were exposed, but he quickly nodded. That's right. Since I have nothing to do recently, why don't I go and take a look? Rong Xiu thought for a moment and smiled. She should be at her busiest right now. I'm afraid it's not a good time to go now. Of course, he missed her very much, but with his current identity, it was really a little troublesome for him to go over legitimately. A trace of disappointment flashed across 36 Respected Elder Ming's face. After pausing for a moment, he asked unwillingly, You're really not going? Rong Xiu had actually planned to wait for Chu Luiyue to settle down in West Hill before going there. However, just as he was about to nod, he saw Yan Qing's hesitant expression. Your Highness, there's something that I don't know if I should say. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Something to do with the West Hill? Yan Qing nodded. Just say it, Rong Xiu said calmly. The current shilling actually referred to Chu Luiyue. Since it was news about her, he naturally had to listen. Yan Qing hesitated for a moment before saying, Recently, a strange young man suddenly appeared by Miss Lu Yu's side. Rong Xiu paused. Immediately after, Yan Qing told Rong Xiu about what she saw that day. With every sentence, Rongshio's expression turned a little colder. Later on, I went to ask around. It was said that Miss Lu Yu met him at the Wanjing competition. It seemed, Yan Qing's voice gradually became softer. Seemed what? Rongshio asked calmly. Yan Qing shuddered, but he still opened his mouth to speak honestly. They seemed to hit it off very well. Miss Lu Yu seemed to use that young man as a follower. She had always done things cleanly. Basically, she could handle everything by herself. Why would she need a follower all of a sudden? Moreover, she always seemed to be polite and modest, but in fact, there were very few people who caught her eye. That young man could be so close to her. It was obvious that he had gained her trust. Rongshio's face was expressionless. His fingers gently rubbed the letter twice. Go and inform Umo to follow I to Shiling. Yan Qing hurriedly said, yes. When does your highness plan to set off? Before he could finish, Rongshio glanced at him lightly. I'll give you an hour to pack. Yan Qing's heart skipped a beat. I'll go right away. With that, Yan Qing quickly got up and left. Seeing his figure disappear in front of him, 36 respected Elder Ming chuckled and teased, Your Highness, didn't you just say that the young princess consort is very busy recently and that you would visit her later? Rongshio's long eyelashes fluttered. It's precisely because she's busy that I will go and help her personally. It'll save me the trouble of finding a follower. 36 respected Elder Ming rubbed his hands excitedly. I'll go too. Rongshio glanced at him. Respected Elder, now that the unparalleled palace's problem has just been solved, there are still many follow-up matters that need someone to watch over. There shouldn't be anyone more suitable than you, right? 36 respected Elder Ming's face instantly fell. What else could there be to do? After today's incident, Tong Chuan and the rest would have to stay put for a long time. This kid just doesn't want me to go, right? He coughed. I promise that I'll only go and take a look at the young princess consort. I definitely won't interfere. Rongshio seemed to have thought of something. His eyes flickered, and he finally nodded. All right. At that moment, Chu Luyue naturally didn't know that Rongshio, who was thousands of miles away, was planning to rush over. Right now, all her energy was placed on the cloud sky copper sword. Night fell, and the galaxy was boundless. The power between heaven and earth constantly gathered on the star stone. Chu Luyue was on it, polishing the long sword in her hand. Once again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 601. The rough, low, and hoarse sound of friction sounded especially cold in the quiet night. Time passed slowly, and Chu Luyue maintained this posture from start to finish, as though she did not know fatigue. But in reality, her arm was already extremely sore, and it did not feel like it was hers anymore. Now, she was only relying on her willpower to force herself to continue. Only when she really could not take it anymore would she stop and rest for a while. But most of the time, she was still polishing this cloud sky copper sword. A night's time passed quietly. The next morning, when the morning light shone on Chu Luyue, she finally put down the sword in her hand and stood on the star stone to stretch her body. Crackling sounds could be heard. Chu Luyue felt as though she had come back to life. After calming down for a while, she picked up the cloud sky copper sword again, wanting to see the results of the night's polishing. Then, the expectant expression on her face froze. Because this cloud sky copper sword had only been polished off a thin layer. Compared to its thick and broad body, it was simply negligible. If it were not for the fact that the surface was obviously much smoother, she would almost suspect that this sword had not undergone any changes at all. She widened her eyes in disbelief and looked at it over and over again. After a while, she finally accepted this fact with difficulty. She had spent the entire night polishing without any sleep and did not allow this cloud sky copper sword to have any substantial progress. "Lass, what's the hurry? Do you think it's so easy to forge a good sword?" Taizu seemed to have already expected Chu Liuyue's reaction and spoke slowly. Chu Liyue exhaled. I thought, now, she finally understood what Taizu had said before. This process required a large amount of energy and mental strength. This was much more difficult than she had expected. Don't worry, yesterday was only the first day, and you are not very familiar with it. After more times, you will know how to use your strength, and it will naturally be much faster. Taizu consoled her. Thank you, Taizu, for your guidance. Chu Liyue kept the cloud sky copper sword and the star stone, planning to come again at night. She was already prepared to fight a long battle. No matter what, she must forge this sword. Chu Liyue returned to Mount Qingyuan and tidied up a little. Then, as usual, he went to the herb garden to look after it for a while. Without the influence of the Mestuan gravel, these herbs grew very smoothly. However, she found that her senior brothers and sisters seemed to have become very busy. In the past, they would often come to the herb garden to take a look. However, today, Chu Liyue stayed alone in the herb garden for a long time. It was only when he was about to leave that he saw a senior sister. After chatting with his senior sister for a while, Chu Liyue found out that they were actually preparing for the sect assembly that would be held a month later. After the news spread, all the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion were on high alert. They knew very well that this time, almost everyone was here for the Chongshu Pavilion. The Nine-Star Alliance had been coveting the position of one of the four major sects for a long time. Obviously, they had added fuel to the fire when the conference was brought forward. Only if they were strong enough and performed well enough at the sect meeting could they keep the Chongshu Pavilion's current position. Therefore, everyone entered a state of diligent cultivation. Chu Liyue arrived at Yu Chi-song's residence alone. When she arrived, he was sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard. There was a chessboard on the stone table in front of him. The chessboard looked familiar. Chu Liyue took a closer look and recognized that the chessboard was the one that she had given to Yu Chi-song. At that time, she was still young and had found her own jade material to carve. However, because the jade material was hard, it took her a lot of effort to carve it. Some of the details were very rough. Even when she thought about it later, she felt that it was too horrible to look at. She thought that he had thrown the chessboard to a corner long ago. She didn't expect that. He still had it intact. Master. She lowered her voice. Yu Chi-song came back to his senses. There was still a trace of confusion in his eyes. Obviously, he was not looking at the chessboard just now. Instead, he was thinking about something. Lu Yu. You're here. Chu Liyue walked over and carefully looked at Yu Chi-song. She was slightly surprised. It had only been one night, but Yu Chi-song seemed to have aged several years in an instant. His eyes were red and there were dark circles under his eyes. It seemed that he hadn't slept all night. He looked very haggard. Obviously, what happened yesterday had a great impact on him. Chu Liyue's heart ached faintly. She quickly lowered her eyes. Master, I'm here today because I have something to give you. Yu Chi-song looked at her in confusion. Chu Liyue took out some things from the interspatial ring one after another. At first, Yu Chi-song didn't react. But after he opened 2 boxes in a row, he immediately realized something and looked at Chu Liyue in shock. These are the things you sold to 100 Herbs Building before. I've brought them back for you. As Chu Liyue spoke, she took out the last few things. A small hill quickly piled up at their feet. Except for those that have been sold, the rest are here, Chu Luiyue said. Yuchi Song looked at those things in a daze and his lips trembled slightly. You don't have to do this, Chu Luiyue said. I don't know what you don't want to give up, so I tried my best to bring all of them back. These things may be just ordinary things for others, but they may be very important to you. Since I have the ability, I should help you. Yuchi Song seemed to be choked by something. After a while, he looked at Chu Luiyue with a complicated expression. How did you get so much money? He knew that Chu Luiyue spent Mu Qinghe's money when she went to 100 Herbs building for the first time. But now she had moved out of Mu Qinghe's house and basically had no contact with Mu Qinghe. She definitely couldn't spend Mu Qinghe's money anymore. And these things added up were worth a lot. You don't have to worry about that. If I couldn't afford it, I wouldn't have helped you bring these back. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, she saw that Yuchi Song still seemed to be quite worried. She could only tell Yuchi Song about her extortion of Jian Fengqi. Of course, she only mentioned it briefly and didn't mention the specifics. However, Yuchi Song was still shocked after hearing it. He only knew that Jian Fengqi had always liked to play, but he didn't know that he was so good at it that he could earn so much money in just a few minutes. But after listening to Chu Luiyue, his mood was indeed much better. Looking at the things piled up at his feet, he was silent for a long time before he finally said, "If that's the case, I won't refuse. Luiyue, I owe you a favor." Chu Luiyue shook her head gently. "Master, you and I are master and disciple. You're being too polite with me. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 602. She truly regarded Yuchi Song as her master and respected him from the bottom of her heart. She didn't have this opportunity in the past and owed him a lot. Now, she finally had the chance to repay him. Yuchi Song looked at Chu Luiyue, and his eyes seemed to ripple. He only spoke softly after a long while. After a long time, he said softly, "Luiyue, you've just become my disciple, but you've already done so much. Logically speaking, even if they were master and disciple, they wouldn't have done so much for each other after just knowing each other for such a long time." But from the beginning, Chu Luiyue seemed to have no reservations about him and the Chongshu Pavilion. Whether it was choosing the Chongshu Pavilion among the many sects without hesitation at the beginning, or helping him redeem these things later, there was nothing to say. This was definitely not something that could be done with money. More importantly, it contained her intentions. Chu Luiyue tilted his head and smiled, his eyes curved. "Didn't Master help me a lot too? If it weren't for you, Xiao Zhou and I might not even have a place to live now." Yuchi Song's mouth curved, but he didn't say anything. According to Chu Luiyue's ability, even if he didn't help and gave them that house, they would definitely be able to find another good place to live. He wanted to ask again, but when he saw the sincere smile on Chu Luiyue's face, he suddenly couldn't say anything. In fact, when he first saw her, he also felt that she was very compatible with him. For some reason, when facing Chu Luiyue, he would always be exceptionally soft-hearted and close. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given her the whistle that he had originally planned to give to Little Crescent Moon. That was an item that he had originally planned to bring into the coffin. Although he had given one to Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou each. In fact, a large part of the reason was because of Chu Luiyue. Perhaps sometimes, the fate between two people was just this subtle. "Luiyue, how about playing a game of chess with me?" Yuchi Song suddenly said. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. "Sure." Yuchi Song said, "Just now, I was playing by myself. You were playing the white piece. It's your turn to go now." Chu Luiyue took out a chess piece from the jar beside him. It was cool to the touch, smooth and tough. It could be seen that Yu Chi-song had played a lot of Go, which was why he was able to grind the Go piece to such a state. Chu Luiyue glanced at the chessboard, thought for a moment, and then put down a white piece. Slap. The jade stones collided with each other, emitting a soft and clear sound. Yu Chi-song's attention was quickly drawn to the game. The two of them exchanged blows and began to fight. After Chu Luiyue played a few chess pieces, he said in a seemingly unintentional manner, "Master, your chessboard doesn't look like an ordinary chessboard." Yu Chi-song smiled with relief and reminisced. "Little Crescent Moon personally made this for me." Chu Luiyue gently nodded. After a while, he placed down another piece and said softly, "I've always heard you mention her. What kind of person is she?" This question opened Yu Chi-song's mouth. As he played Go, he told Chu Luiyue about Little Crescent Moon in detail. In the past, he was unwilling to tell others about this. However, perhaps because he had experienced too much in the past 2 days, he was very tired and wanted to find someone to talk to. Thus, he subconsciously said a lot. Chu Luiyue listened to him quietly and occasionally chimed in with him. However, after listening, she realized that there were many things that she did not remember, but Yu Chi-song remembered them very clearly. Her heart seemed to be surrounded by some gentleness. After experiencing those bone-chilling betrayals, such gentleness and care seemed extremely precious. The two of them played a few games of Go without realizing it. After half a day, Chu Luiyue stood up and bade farewell. In the next few days, Chu Luiyue cultivated in her room during the day and went to Yan Linfeng to sharpen the cloud sky copper sword at night. Although the speed of sharpening the sword was still very slow, she was indeed becoming more and more skilled with each passing day. In the end, her progress gradually became obvious. What made her even more gratified was that in this process, her physical strength had indeed increased by quite a bit. Hence, she was even more motivated to sharpen the cloud sky copper sword. Chu Luiyue stayed on Qingyuan Mountain just like that. Her daily life was simple and plain. Chu Luiyue's side was quiet, but Xiling City became lively. The news of Jian Fengqi spending 6,600,000 white crystal coins to buy a slave with a faint yuan body quickly spread throughout Xiling City. Mu Hongyu was a living person. There was no way she could hide. Even if she could hide it for a day or two, she would still be discovered immediately when she appeared in front of everyone in the future. Hence, Jian Fengqi didn't even think of hiding this matter. In any case, he had spent the money openly. No one could do anything to him. In the end, he didn't expect that everything would be fine outside. Instead, when he brought Mu Hongyu back to Dragon Teeth Mountain, he was attacked by his old father head-on. He had just stepped through the gate of Dragon Teeth Mountain when he was caught by Jian Shai. "Brat! You still dare to come back?" Jian Fengqi was stunned. He looked at his father who was in a rage and was stunned. "Father! What's wrong with you? What's wrong? You still have the nerve to ask me what's wrong? Why don't you look at what you've done?" As Jian Shai spoke, he continued to hit Jian Fengqi. Jian Fengqi wanted to run without hesitation. He couldn't return to this home. However, how could he be Jian Shai's match? Before he could run 2 steps, he was blocked. Jian Fengqi immediately admitted his guilt. "Father! I was wrong." Only then did Jian Shai stop. However, one of his hands was still in the air, as if he would continue to hit him at any time. "Speak. How did you do wrong?" Jian Fengqi thought frantically, but he still couldn't figure it out. He could only ask tentatively. "Your son has done too many wrong things." "Which one are you talking about? Little brat." Jian Shai's slap finally landed fiercely. "You're usually arrogant and presumptuous, and your mother always indulges you. Now, just because you have some money, you even dare to buy a slave. You've grown up. Jian Fengqi finally understood that it was because of Mu Hongyu. He tried to hide as he explained. Father. I did this for a reason. What other reason could there be? Don't tell me it's because of her faint yuan body. Do you think I don't know what kind of character you have? I've heard that the little girl is very beautiful. Did you go for that? It was fine that he was usually dissolute, but now, he actually did such a thing. It was simply embarrassing. Jian Fengqi was stunned. Only then did he understand what his father meant. He asked with a strange expression, Father, do you think I bought her back because of her appearance? What else? Jian Shai's chest heaved as he glared and said. If you weren't so insensible, would Lu Yu abandon our Dragon Teeth Mountain and run to the Chongshu Pavilion? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 603. Jian Fengqi was taken aback. What did this have to do with? Chu Luiyue chose the Chongshu Pavilion. Wasn't that her choice? What did it have to do with him? However, in Jian Shai's eyes, his dumbfounded look was a sign of guilt. He pointed at Jian Fengqi's nose and said angrily, You, not only did you hurt Lu Yu's heart, you even dragged other girls into this. How could I have a son like you? Jian Fengqi closed his eyes with a headache. This was a big misunderstanding. Father. Where did you hear all this from? Don't you even trust your own son? Jian Shai was heartbroken. If you were reliable, would I, your father, be like this? It's all your fault. Jian Fengqi was speechless. He said weakly, no matter what, you have to give me a chance to explain, right? Jian Shai finally said, get in here. Jian Fengqi was secretly glad that he had asked Mu Hongyu to wait outside the mountain gate before he came back. Otherwise, if she saw this scene, he would lose all his face. Then I'll invite Hongyu over. As he spoke, he turned around and suddenly saw that Mu Hongyu had come over. She was standing not far away and watching this scene. A disciple of Dragon Teeth Mountain was standing next to her. Jian Fengqi's eyelids twitched violently. Did she see everything just now? Jian Shai saw that he was stunned and couldn't help but sneer. Since you dared to bring her back, why don't you dare to let her come up? I've already asked someone to invite her over. With that, he walked past the stiff Jian Fengqi and walked toward Mu Hongyu. When he got closer and saw Mu Hongyu's appearance, he cursed Jian Fengqi even more fiercely in his heart. This girl looks like she's only in her teens. How dare he? Thinking of this, Jian Shai's face revealed a kind smile. He wanted to make himself look less fierce, for fear of scaring the girl. Young lady, I'm the Mountain Lord of Dragon Teeth Mountain. What's your name? Mu Hongyu was also stunned when she saw the scene when she came up. Who would have thought that Jian Fengqi, who was so arrogant and unbridled, would actually be chased and beaten up? And this person should be Jian Fengqi's father. She hurriedly bowed. My daughter, Mu Hongyu, greets the mountain chieftain. Jian Shai saw that she was clean and well-mannered, but her body seemed to have suffered a lot of injuries. His heart was immediately filled with tenderness. Don't be nervous. With me and his mother around, that brat won't dare to bully you. If he had wronged you before, feel free to tell me. I will definitely help you teach him a lesson. Mu Hongyu blinked. That. Lord Mountain Lord, you seem to have misunderstood. Young Master Jian didn't make me feel wronged. In fact, it was all thanks to him that I was able to escape from Yuxiang Hole. Jian Shai secretly thought that this young lady was naive. Others might be interested in the faint yuan body, but Jian Fengqi definitely wouldn't. He was only so extravagant because he had a little more money in his hands. Now, the entire West Hill was filled with rumors that Jian Fengqi had ulterior motives for being so extravagant. Otherwise, with his talent and wealth, why would he need to do this? More importantly, if Lu Yu knew about this, wouldn't he look down on Jian Fengqi even more? To think that he had painstakingly persuaded Chu Luye to come to Dragon Teeth Mountain in Thousand View Garden. It was all ruined by this brat. Jian Shai said in a low voice, "Hong Yu, don't worry. After you come here, no one will dare to do anything to you. I will help you make the decision." Mu Hongyu couldn't help but glance at Jian Fengqi behind him. "Your father seems to have gotten something wrong." Jian Fengqi was expressionless. It was rare for him to do a good thing, but why did it seem like he was still in the wrong? Jian Shai saw Mu Hongyu secretly looking at Jian Fengqi and thought that she was being threatened by Jian Fengqi. He was even angrier. This brat had let down Lu Yu and Mu Hongyu. Mu Hongyu saw that his face was even angrier and knew that he had misunderstood. She hurriedly said, "Hill Master, you have misunderstood. Young Master Jian and I are friends. So is Lu Yu." Jian Shai was stunned. "What did you say?" Mu Hongyu explained, "You don't know. Lu Yu and I are both from the Empire of Yaoqin. We have known each other for a long time and are also from the same academy. We have a good relationship. When we were in the Empire of Yaoqin, we met young Master Jian. Young Master Jian even took care of my mother's health." The more Jian Shai listened, the stranger he felt. The more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. Why did this sound different from what he had expected? This time, I accidentally wandered here. Coincidentally, young Master Jian and Lu Yu were both in Yuxiang Hole. Young Master Jian helped and bought me and brought me out. We just came back from Lu Yu's place." Jian Shai reacted for a moment, and his expression immediately became very interesting. This meant that his son didn't go out to harm little girls, but went to help a friend instead. "Then didn't he just," Jian Shai slowly asked, "You? Is what you said true?" Mu Hongyu hurriedly nodded. "What I said just now was not a lie. You have really misunderstood young Master Jian this time." Jian Shai's neck stiffened as he turned to look at Jian Fengqi. Jian Fengqi suddenly smiled coldly. "Did you hear that? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.